University, Mr. Sahrul Kurniawan, SPMP, PhD, the Honorable Head of Forestry Studi Program Faculty of Agriculture, Brawijaya University, Mr. Cahyo Prayogo, SPMP, PhD, the Honorable Choice Person 3-in-1 Lecturer, World Science and Technology, Mr. Dr. Lee Singhua from Institute of Tropical Forestry and Forest Product, Putra Malaysia University. The Honorable Chief Executive of the 3-in-1 World Science and Technology, Mr. Erekso Hadiuja Eswood, MSc. And then the Honorable Lecturer of Forestry Study Program within the Faculty of Agriculture, Brawijaya University. First of all, let's try to thank you Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala who has given us guidance, happiness, healthy, and mercy, so we can attend and practice in the special, even with any of praise and solution, even our Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, who had brought us to the front of the league from the deaths in this land. Before going and future, introduce myself to you. My name is Jainuddin. I as Master of Ceremony in the 3-in-1 lecture of the Forestry Study Program 2022. Next start this 3-in-1 lecture. Let's try according to each other belief and belief. Praying is welcome. Praying can be enough. For the next is main event session is the form of delivering material about citric acid as screen moving again and binder for words which will be delivered by Dr. Lee Xinghua. The same as the previous presentation for the delivery of material will be accompanied by a very extraordinary moderator is Mrs. Yulia Amirul Fatah, STMS. For the committee is changed, please open the moderator's curriculum vitae, Mrs. Yulia Amirul Fatah, please. Has appeared on the screen for our moderator. This is Mrs. Yulia Amirul Fatah, STMSE. Mrs. Yulia Amirul Fatah, STMSE, list lecture and doctoral students as achievement 2020 education 2020 and 24 until 2028 Malang Brawijaya University bachelor degree, and then next to study the education IPB University master degree 2018 until 2000 in Bogor. And then next education IPB University doctoral degree then 2016 present in Bogor, and then experience engineering staff summer post IPB University interns and Russian student Kyoto University 2021 until 2022 in Japan. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and then Mr. Lee Singhua, directly to us moderator, Mrs. Yulia Amirul Fatah, please welcome.
Okay, thank you for time. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Respectable to all lecturers of the Soil Department and also today's presenter, Dr. Luar from UBM, and honorable all participants, the forestry student of Brawijaya University. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Yulia Amirul Fatah, the moderator of today's session. I'm very pleased to see you here and welcome all of you to the day 3 online session of 3-in-1 lectures agenda. Before the presentation begins, let me inform you how the lecture will be going on. First, I will introduce Dr. Lee by reading his curriculum vitae, and the second, Dr. Lee will be invited to present the material, and Dr. Lee will present two materials. Part 1 is about the citric acid as modifying agent of wood, and part 2 is about citric acid as binder wood for wood composite. After that, a question and answer session will be followed by a discussion. And right now, allow me to share screen of the Dr. Lee CV. Okay, thank you, the operator. Dr. Lee Senghua came from China and right now is a Malaysian citizen.
No,
He was born on 10 December 1987, and right now he is under Institute of Tropical Forestry and Forest Products in University Putra, Malaysia. He can speak in 4 languages, and Dr. Lee, if you are enjoying maybe in some parts, we can speak in Bahasa or Indonesian language because it was similar in Bahasa Melayu.
Yes. Yeah,
okay,
betul.
Thank you.
Yeah.
From their scientific and job experience, we know that Dr. Lee was expert in forest productions, especially in wood composite. In the last 2 years, next operator, please. In the last 2 years, he got 3 achievements in academic awards. Congratulations on your achievement, Dr. Lee. And next, he has more than 20 research projects. And next, this is the article list, and actually this is more than 102,000 articles, and also there are some books, chapters, and also he has the Scopus Age Index. Right now it's 20. It's so great achievement, I think. And next, jump to the last page, please. Okay, maybe because there is so many articles, so this is so really great. So this is beside of all the experiences and also the contributing, Dr. Lee also contributed to editorial for some journals, special issues, books, magazines, and proceedings. And also there are some other achievements. So now allow me to welcome the speaker, Lee Senghua, PhD, to deliver his presentation. Dr. Lee, the time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. So let me share my screen first.
It's clearly seen by us.
Okay, so I will start. Selamat pagi semua. Saya Lee, saya Malaysia, University Putra Malaysia. So let me briefly introduce myself first. So my name is Lee. I'm a research fellow in Institute of Tropical Forestry and Forest Product in University Putra Malaysia. So today I would like to present a topic titled citric acid as green modifying agent and binder for wood. So this is the presentation outline. So the topic will be split into, for the part 1 is citric acid as a modifying agent for wood. So in this part, I will briefly discuss the introduction of the wood modification method. And the part 1.2 is the citric acid used for wood modification. And the part 2 will be citric acid as a main binder for wood composite. So in this part, I will explain some introduction on the wood adhesive and the citric acid. And part 2 is the citric acid as a wood adhesive for binder for wood-based composite. So now, let me begin with the part 1, citric acid as modifying agent for wood. So for this part, I will briefly introduce the types of wood modification method. So wood is a versatile, flexible, and cost-effective for many applications. Although wood continue to be used for many applications because of its many excellent material properties, such as good strength to weight ratio, aesthetic appearance. It also suffers from a number of disadvantages, such as the dimensional changes, its response to altering atmospheric conditions, susceptibility to biological attack, and changes in appearance when exposed to weathering, place restriction on the potential end users of the wood. But the origin of the wood properties can be understood by referring its structure at the microscopic and macroscopic and molecular levels. So to overcome this shortcoming, the dimensional instability, the low biological resistance, wood modification is necessary. So first, what is wood modification? So since many of the properties of wood are ultimately determined by its chemical constituents, wood modification often seek to make changes at this level in order to produce a material that has the desired properties. However, there are also wood modification that do not involve alteration of the chemical composition of the material. So wood modification is a means of altering the material to overcome one or more its disadvantages. The aim of a modification may be to bring about an improvement in decay resistance or dimensional stability, to reduce water absorption, to improve weathering performance, and so on. So the term wood modification applies to the application of a process that change the properties of the material such that during the lifetime of the product, no loss of the enhanced performance of the wood should happen. Okay, so let's see for some scenario here to see whether it can be considered as wood modification. So for the scenario 1, it is wood preservative treatment using chromatic arsenic, CCA, be considered as wood modification. So the problem here is using this convention technology, the decay resistance of the wood can be increased by the application of CCA, the wood preservative. So to be sure, the wood properties has been improved and the wood can, in a sense, be considered to be modified. In addition, the property enhancement can be considered to occur for the lifetime of the products. However, although these changes have been made, the mode of action of the preservative is due to the biocidal action of this substance on decay organism. It means that it is toxic. So such activity is often non-specific in that although the attack by the target organism is prevented or retarded, the property may also be expanded to non-target organisms such as mammal. So thus, although during the lifetime of the treated products, there may be a very low toxic associated with in-service use, this may well change at the end of the life of the products. So therefore, the potential loss of the preservative into the environment may be a problem in disposal or recycling situations. Where this occurs, the biocidal action of the preservative remains and this can have a negative environmental impact. And of course, this problem can be addressed by choosing a substance that breaks down rapidly in the environment when released from the wood. However, if the mode of action of such a substance whilst in the wood is biocidal or toxic in nature, then a treatment of this kind is not considered to be a wood modification. So because it is toxic, pose an environmental threat to the environment. So the wood preservative treatment using the CCA is not considered as a wood modification. And to give another example, so for the scenario 2, is applying a coating or adding wax during the forming process of wood modification. Yes, it may be possible to improve the dimensional stability of the solid wood by applying a coating or adding wax during the forming process. However, but the treatment are not permanent. So in that, a coating may crack or the wax may leach or come out during the lifetime of the products. So this loss of performance occur because the treating agent is not chemically bonded to or otherwise immobilized within the wood structure. So however, if for example, the coating were to be, so for example, the coating is to be applied so that there exists a covalent bond between it and the wood, so an improvement of the performance of the coating would be expected. So such treatment would be a surface modification of the substrate. So the main point here is the coating. If the coating and the wax is not permanent, so they are leach out or they crack during the in life service. So they are not considered as the wood modification unless the coating applied has the chemical reaction to form a covalent bond with the wood itself. Only that we can consider as a wood modification. We call that surface modification. And so to conclude all the above scenario, so this is a definition of the wood modification. This is come from Hill, 2006. So he said that he concluded that the wood modification involved the action of a chemical, biological, or physical agent upon the material, resulting in a desired property enhancement during the service life of the modified wood. The modified wood should itself be non-toxic under service condition, and furthermore, there should be no release of any toxic substance during service or at the end of life following disposal or recycling of the modified wood. If the modification is intended for improved resistance to biological attacks such as termites or fungi, then the mode of action should be non-biocidal. So to recap here, there are some main points here. So the wood modification must involve the reaction of chemical reaction, biological and physical agent with the wood. And the second one is to result as a property enhancement, to enhance property of the wood. And the most important thing is it is non-toxic under the service condition. And also there is no release or leaching of any toxic during the service. Or if this modification is used to prevent the fungi decay and termite decay, the mode of action should be non-toxic. So this is the definition of wood modification. So here we talk about the principal mechanism of wood modification. So modification of wood can involve active modification, which result in a change of the chemical nature of the material, or a passive modification in which a change in the property result without altering the chemistry of the material. So we can see from the figure here, there's two example of the passive modification and active modification. So the passive modification does not change the wood chemical properties. So the mode of action normally include the lumen filling and the cell wall filling. On the other hand, active modification involve the reaction of the reagent of the treatment with the wood polymer, such as the cross-linking, the degradation of the cell wall, or formation of some bond with the wood. So most active modification method investigated to date have involved the chemical reaction of a reagent with cell wall polymer hydroxyl group. This hydroxyl group play a key role in the wood-water interaction while being the most reactive site. So in the moist wood, in a wet wood, the water molecules settle between the wood polymers, forming hydrogen bonds between the hydroxyl group and the individual water molecule. So a change in the number of these water molecule result in shrinkage and swelling of the wood. All possible types of wood treatment affect the wood-water interaction mechanism. The main wood treatment interaction mechanism that may be responsible for new wood properties is summarized as a figure. So the several wood treatment interaction mechanism tend to occur at the same time. And for example, there might be some various variety of mechanism occur in one modification. For example, in thermal modification, part of the cell wall polymer are changed, which may lead to cross-linking and the reduction of the hydroxyl group and cleavage of the polymer change. So it means that for any types of modification, they will involve a lot of mechanisms. And next, so this is the wood modification method, and we discussed, we mentioned previously, it can be classified into two, which is active and passive modification. So the active is normally a result in the chemical changes in the cell wall polymers, while the passive has no alteration in the chemical of the material. The example of the active modification is chemical modification and thermal modification, while the example of the passive modification include the impregnation modification. So the wood modification industry is currently undergoing major developments, driven in part by environmental concerns regarding the use of wood treated with certain classes of preservatives. So several fairly new technologies such as thermal modification, acetylation, perforation, and different impregnation process have been successfully introduced on the market and demonstrate the potential of this modern technology. So from this figure, we can see that there is a lot of wood modification methods. Include, for the example, we have four main processes here, include the chemical process, the chemical modification, the thermal modification, the EPR modification. EPR is electromagnetic, plasma and laser treatment, and other processes. So for the under the chemical modification, we have an active modification, acetylation, and perforation, and resin impregnation using the PF resin, and some resin DMDHEU, and the passive modification, the resin impregnation using the melamine resin or other reagents like chitosan, the PEG. And another type of wood modification is thermal modification. So here we have a different types of thermal modification, include the thermal treatment, thermal hydro treatment, thermomechanical treatment, thermo-hydro-mechanical treatment. And for the EPL processes, we have the electromagnetic treatment using the UV, using the microwave, high frequency, and plasma treatment using cold plasma, thermal plasma, laser treatment using carbon dioxide, excimer, and other processes such as a biological treatment, the biomimetic mineralization, and there's some new method also invented. But today we will only focus on this one, the chemical modification and the thermal modification, because this two is the most commercialized modification method in the world. Okay, so before we move to the types of wood modification method, we need to know how to characterize characterize modified wood, how to determine the efficiency, effectiveness of the treatment. So in any study of the moisture, sorption, desorption properties of modified wood, the moisture content of a sample is determined using gravimetric method. So the EMC, we call the equilibrium moisture content of the sample, is based upon the oven dry weight of the modified wood. So we can see that the modified, this is the weight of the modified specimen, and then we minus the original weight of the sample, and then we over the original weight of the sample and time 100 to get the EMC percentage. However, in many cases, this is not explicitly stated and can be a source of error. So if the weight of a sample of the wood is increased by 20% and it is then exposed in an atmosphere at a given relative humidity alongside a sample of unmodified wood, there will be an apparent reduction in EMC, simply due to the increased weight of the sample due to the modification. So another saying that when we treat the wood will gain some weight. And if we compare used weight, compare with the modified weight, unmodified wood, untreated wood, so of course, it will result in very low, relatively low moisture content, EMC. So in order to understand the effect of wood modification of the modified wood, the EMC value should be based upon the oven dry weight of the wood substance rather than the actual weight of the sample, which is the weight of the wood substance plus the weight of the modificant. So in some study, the reduced EMC is used rather than the EMC. So from here, we can see that we can use weight of the modified sample, and then we minus the oven dry weight of the sample after modification, and over the oven dry weight of the specimen before modification, and we can get the percentage of the reduced EMC and to avoid the error. And the reduction is EMC as a result of wood modification is sometimes reported in terms of a parameter referred to as moisture exclusion efficiency, MEE, which is defined as follows. So this is the EMC. We used the previous formula to get the EMC of the modified wood of the unmodified wood, and then we have the EMC of the modified wood, and then we use the EMC of the unmodified wood minus the EMC of the modified wood over the EMC of unmodified wood, and we can get the moisture exclusion efficiency. So normally a positive value of moisture MEE, positive MEE means that the treatment is effective. So the higher the MEE value is, the higher the effectiveness of the treatment. So these three formula is for the moisture relationship. And to characterize of modified wood in terms of dimensional stability, we use the swelling coefficient. So the dimension, the length, width, thickness to modify sample will be measured, and then we will report it as the swelling coefficient. Calculate for the volume. From this dimension, we can get the volume of the water swollen volume of the wood, and then the oven dry volume of the wood, and then we can get the swelling coefficient. So if the modification impart dimensional stability to the wood, the difference between the water saturated wood and oven dry volume will be very less, will be reduced. And when we will substitute in the anti-swelling efficiency, we can get a very high anti-swelling efficiency here. So same with the MEE. A positive ASE value means that represent the treatment, the good treatment effectiveness of the modification. So this is basically the characterization of the modified wood to test the effectiveness of the wood modification. So now we will focus on the chemical modification. So the chemical modification of wood is defined as the reaction of the chemical reagent with the wood polymerate constituent, resulting in the formation of a covalent bond between the reagent and the wood substrate. So chemical modification of wood takes place when a chemical reaction of the agent occurs with the polymerate constituent of wood, such as lignin, hemicellulose, and cellulose, and resulting in the formation of a stable covalent bond between the reagent and the cell wall polymers. So consequently, chemical modification of wood is considered as an active modification because it results in a chemical change in the cell wall polymers. So the example of chemical modification include, we have two types of chemical modification here. One is acetylation and the other one is purpurylation. So reaction of acetic for acetylation. So reaction of acetic anhydride take place with the cell wall of the hydroxyl of the wood or the hydroxyl group to form an ester bond, and with the acetic acid produced as a byproduct. So chemically treated wood can be classified according to a double criterion, which is modification of the lumens, which is a cellular level, and the modification of the cell wall material, molecular level. So you can see the figure here. The figure shows the cross section of a single cell. And the number one is the untreated wood. Untreated wood. So in 2 and 3, the cell wall remain untreated. The cell wall remain untreated, but the resin and any product, the any reagent is deposited on the internal face of the lumen. Internal face of the lumen for the number 2, and totally fill or partially fill the lumen for number 3. And for the figure of number 4, 5, 6, this is the cross section of the single cell of modified wood. So similar. So in this, again, 3 cases are distinguished. No deposit in the lumen for number 4, and for number 5, there's a deposit in the internal face of the lumen, same like this one, the untreated one. And this is the 6, and the 6 are partially or totally filling of the lumen. Same with the number 3. So this is a different mechanism of the chemical treated wood. So one of the example of the chemical modification is acetylation. So in Germany, Fudge in 1928 carried out the first experiment on wood acetylation using chemical reagent like acetic anhydride and sulfuric acid as catalysts. So the Tamu in 1946 was the first researcher who described the use of the acetylation process to stabilize wood from swelling in water. Since then, many labs worldwide have executed studies on the acetylation of wood in a variety of ways by using several wood species. However, some early attempts proposed by 1961 to commercialize the process of wood acetylation in the USA is failed due to the high production costs involved. But fortunately, innovative lab work to extend the acetylation to the semi-industry level was successfully performed in the Netherlands during 1990s. So acetylated wood is produced by reacting wood with acetic anhydride. In this reaction, some hydroxyl group in the wood cell are replaced with the acetyl group. And then the reaction between the acetic anhydride and the wood in a single displacement reaction. That is, there is a 1-to-1 substitution of the acetyl group for hydroxyl group, and no further reaction for polymerization. So practically speaking, so the acetylation process involve submerge the wood in the acetic anhydride and at elevated temperature, followed by a cleaning to remove excess acetic anhydride and acetic acid. So gas phase reaction with Cathine gas or acetic anhydride vapor have also been used, but are less common. So the amount of permanent uptake of the acetic group depend upon the reaction time, the temperature, and the presence of the initiator or stirring agent. So as stated previously, acetylation results in the replacement of a single hydroxyl group with an acetyl group. So in the most basic sense, this substitution results in two changes. The first is the bucking effect. Since the acetyl group is larger than the hydroxyl group, it replaces. And secondly, the acetyl group is less polar than the hydroxyl group, and this affects the hydrophilicity of the wood cell wall. Of these two factors, bucking has the largest effect on the reduction of moisture absorption. Moisture absorption is So moisture absorption is an important metric for the acetylated wood, as preventing moisture absorption improves the dimensional stability and resistance to wood decay fungi. So bulking was found to be the primary method by which acetylation affects moisture absorption in experiments where different size carboxylic acid group was substituted on the hydroxyl group. So larger substituted group reduce water vapor absorption with less chemical than smaller group. So this is the changes caused by the acetylation. So acetylation reduces the number of absorption sites for water by replacing the hydroxyl with acetyl group. Acetylation is expected to decrease the rate of liquid water uptake by capillary suction. So since the acetylation decreases the hygroscopic and space for water within the wood cell wall, the modification also affects the dimensional changes accompanying moisture changes. So the bucking from the acetylation results in a larger dimension in the dry state of the wood. It bulks the wood cell wall by adding molecular volume, so which decrease the space for water between wood cell wall and therefore decrease the dimensional changes of the wood. The basis by which acetylation protects wood from decay has been debated since the development of the technology, and consensus remain elusive. Recent review on the mechanism of wood protection in acetylated wood have summarized 5 major competent theories. So which is the first one is so they conclude that why the acetylation protect the wood from decay. They come up with 5 theories. So the first one is the acetylation render the wood polymer unrecognizable to fungi enzymes. And the second one is acetylation block the availability of nutrients to the fungus. And the third theory is the micropores in the wood cell wall are blocked, preventing degradation. The fourth one is the hydroxyl group in the cell wall are modified and then preventing hydrolysis. And the fifth one is the reduced moisture content of the acetylated wood impedes diffusion. However, so for the first theory, some researchers have measured the acetal content of modified wood during decay and found that the acetal content of the wood dropped as the wood was decayed. In other words, fungi have been shown to either remove highly acetylated wood polymer or cleave or remove the acetyl group from the polymer. Also, some researchers conclude that the fungal metabolites and enzymes involved in the wood degradation are still functional in at least some of the modified wood. So therefore, it is clear that the theory 1 must be rejected because it has found that the fungal metabolite is still functioning in the acetylated wood. And for the second theory, it is apparent from the gene expression study that the wood decay. Fungi attempt to break down the modified wood. So this demonstrates that the acetylation is not fungi toxic. So this study have shown that the fungal decay mechanism are still functional in acetylated wood. However, the fungi are unable to rapidly break down the cell wall material. Therefore, the second hypothesis is also not completely correct. So the fungi is still able to find the available nutrients from the wood, but maybe take a longer time. So this theory is also not completely correct. So similar to the theory number 3 and number 4, although it's often claimed that the acetylated wood with a high matte skin is decay resistant, many recent studies have shown that the acetylation does not prevent decay, but rather really reduce the decay kinetics. So for the theory 3 and 4, so many research, they are used a very short-term exposure to the decay. So they claim that the modified wood is decay resistant, but actually it's not. It is not, because the acetylated wood only change the decay kinetics, which is require longer time to decay the wood. So this study correspond observation that acetylation delay rather than prevent decay suggests that the acetylation protects wood by changing the decay kinetic. So reaction kinetic depend upon diffusion, and often diffusion can be the rate limiting step in the kinetic processes. Furthermore, this diffusion is strongly depending on the moisture content of the wood. Therefore, the evidence suggests that unique wood moisture relation of acetylated wood may be a key to understand its mechanism of wood protection. So of the 5 hypotheses of how the acetylation protect wood, it is clear that the reduced moisture content in the wood cell wall appear to be the primary method by which acetylation protect wood from decay. However, the mechanism by which the lower wood moisture content lead to decay production are still unclear. So more work needs to be conducted to understand how diffusion may be related to the decay in the acetylated wood. So here we come, this is the second chemical modification, which is phosphorylation. Phosphorylation is a wood modification process based on impregnation with alcohol and subsequent polymerization between the wood structure via heating curing. So phosphorylation alcohol is a liquid product produced from agricultural waste, such as sugarcane and corn cobs. Phosphorylation is executed by impregnating wood with a mixture of phosphorylation alcohol and catalyst, and then heating it to cause polymerization. The purpose of phosphorylation is to improve resistance to biological degradation and dimensional stability by applying a non-toxic phosphorylation alcohol polymer. Phosphorylation of wood was first described in the 1950s as a way of providing better resistance towards acid and base. In this and other early works, zinc chloride was used as a catalyst. So however, the use of zinc chloride gives rise to 2 problems. So zinc chloride degraded the cellulose and then resulted in the strength loss of the wood. And the zinc chloride had poor penetration into the wood, resulting in treatment gradients. So during the 1990s, some researchers suggested the replacement of catalyst, which is using maleic anhydride, which elevated both this problem. So in later lab scale population study, citric acid or weak acid has also been used as sole or additional initiator. Also, and during the curing step of the wood phosphorylation process, the added initiator helped the phosphoryl alcohol polymerize with itself. So linear change of furan connected by a carbon molecule and which conjugated double bond are formed. So this steep flat linear molecule of fluorescence, you can see from the figure here, you can see that it's a fluorescence. So using the optic microscopic, you can see the phosphoryl alcohol is deposited into the cell wall. And the changes caused by the phosphorylation include the biological durability of wood is upgraded to class 1, that's very durable. So the decay resistant test results over a period of 9 years have shown that the phosphorylated wood of moderate loading has comparable resistance with that of pine wood impregnated with CCA. So the mechanical properties of wood, except for impact resistance, are enhanced when wood is treated with a phosphoryl alcohol polymer. Phosphorylated wood is characterized by greater hardness, they have higher hardness, elasticity, and rupture moduli as compared to the untreated wood. However, it is also more brittle, easy to break. So they also exhibit strong dimensional stability and resistance to weathering. Moreover, its water swelling and shrinking value are over 50% lower than the untreated wood. So phosphorylated wood is extremely resistant to marine borers at high level of weight percent gain. And the recent study regarding the ecotoxicology of phosphorylated wood and leachate from the preparated wood show no significant ecotoxicity. While its combustion, when we burn the wood, it did not release any volatile organic compound or polyaromatic hydrocarbon above normal level of wood combustion. So therefore, we can conclude that the phosphorylation of wood is a safe process for the environment. It is a green treatment method. So however, many researchers are still arguing for whether the phosphorylation is classified as a chemical or impregnation modification. So as we know, the polymerization of the phosphoryl alcohol in wood is a complex chemical reaction. Even today, the question of whether phosphorylation is a distinct chemical modification process remains unanswered. Some scientists believe that it comprises a chemical modification process since the phosphoryl alcohol polymer react with itself and possibly react with the lignin in the cell wall. So therefore, the phosphoryl alcohol complexes are predominantly deposit in the wood cavity and cell wall. Polymerization takes place in the microscopic cell cavities and easily detected using optical microscopy. Recent nano indentation studies have indicated that the improvement in indentation modulus and hardness of phosphorylated wood cell demonstrate indirectly but strongly phosphoryl alcohol penetrate wood cell during the modification process. So based on this, they consider that the phosphorylation is a chemical impregnation. However, some perception from another scientist that think that the phosphorylation lead to a permanent bucking of the cell wall, meaning that the cells are swollen in a permanent way. So one possible explanation is that the phosphoryl alcohol polymer inside the cell wall occupies some of the space that is normally filled with water molecule when wood swell in humid conditions. So various scientists consider, based on this, they consider that the phosphorylation as an impregnation modification process in which the properties of the phosphorylated wood appear more like those of polymer filled cell wall rather than the reacted cell wall. So perhaps we need to more works are required to to clarify this one, either it's belong to chemical or impregnation modification. So the third, this is another chemical modification, thermal modification. So thermal modification of wood is defined as the application of heat to wood in order to bring about a desired improvement in the performance of the material. So thermal modification causes a permanent changes of wood properties by heating at elevated temperature, a phenomena that was first observed over 100 years ago. So after early attempt at the commercialization in the USA and Germany, the industry production of thermally modified wood began in the 1990s in Finland, France, Germany, and the Netherlands. For the time being, thermal modification is by far the most advanced commercially. So today, more than 100 manufacturers of thermally modified wood exist worldwide. Most of them being located in Europe, of course, and the annual production of the thermally modified wood has increased to more than 500,000 meter cube. So the production of thermally modified wood usually takes place between 160 to 240 degrees Celsius. So hence the temperature are higher than during the conventional kiln drying of wood, but still low enough to keep the thermal conversion at a manageable rate. So thermal modification relies on the effect of heat and does not require any chemical additive. It's different from the acetation and the perforation modification we mentioned previously. Thermal modification does not require any chemical additive. So the process is also applicable to refractory wood species. They are difficult to impregnate, and the wood is affected through the entire cross-section. The treatment in an environment with low oxygen content at 160 to 240 degrees Celsius partially degrade the wood and cause the changes in the chemical composition of the ultra structure of the cell wall. So the underlying principle of the thermal treatment is to convert the hydrophilic nature of the wood to hydrophobic through thermal degradation of polysaccharide such as hemicellulose, mainly the terminal labial hemicellulose in the wood cell wall. So the thermal modification normally generally they lead to reduce the affinity of wood to take up moisture, because after the treatment, the wood itself will become hydrophobic. So the water vapor absorption decrease with the and the decrement is intensity increase with the treatment intensity. So in line with the reduced affinity of thermally modified wood to take up moisture, thermal modification improves the dimensional stability of wood. The effect of thermal modification on the dimensional stability depends on the wood species and the process condition. So after thermal modification, the wood becomes more resistant against decay fungi. Although the wood can still be degraded by the fungi, the thermal modification prolongs the time until decay starts and decreases the rate which mass loss proceeds during the incubation with decay fungi. Similar to reduction in hygroscopicity, the effect on the decay resistance is dependent on the process condition, such as higher temperature and longer treatment duration cause an increase in decay resistance. The above described improvement of wood properties by thermal modification are accompanied by a loss in strength and ductility. So one of the main disadvantages of the thermal modification is the modification reduce the strength of the wood and wood-based panel. So this effect typically limit the use of the thermally modified wood to non-load bearing application. So this is theoretical basis for wood production by thermal modification. So it is commonly accepted that the preferential degradation of hemicellulose play a dominant role in changing the properties of the wood by thermal modification. Hemicellulose degradation interferes the load-sharing capabilities of the cell wall to decrease the strength and toughness of the wood, reduce the number of absorption sites for water, and remove easily accessible nutrients for decay fungi. So consequently, as a result, the wood properties change often correlate with the wood mass loss during the thermal modification, which is primarily caused by the hemicellulose degradation. So, however, the removal of the hemicellulose is not the only cause for the wood protection effect. There are still many other factors that we need to, more works are need to be conducted to find out. One of the main characteristics of the thermal modification is the wood protection effect is not entirely permanent. In addition to permanent reduction in EMC and swelling, there is a reversible reduction that can be restored by exposing the modified wood to elevated humidity or by soaking in water. So the thermally modified wood, if you expose it to a very high relative humidity or submerge or immerse in the water, the effect of the thermal modification might lose. So it is not permanent. It's not entirely permanent. So this is the heat treatment. So heat treatment can be a thermal treatment. Thermal treatment can be conducted in different treating media. So previously we know that for thermal treatment we do not need any chemical reagent, but we can immerse the wood in oil or water or under the nitrogen atmosphere. So each medium resulted in different extent of changes in the properties of treated wood. Thermal treatment in air, usually when we treat the wood in air, is often least resulted in the reduction of strength due to the exposure to oxygen that resulting in the occurrence of the oxidative process. So the oxidative process is blamed to be the main reason that reduce the strength properties of the thermally modified wood. So to avoid this, the thermal treatment can be conducted in oil or nitrogen medium to exclude the influence of oxygen. So for example here, so I raised the example here is the oil heat treatment. So we treat the wood in oil, in rapeseed oil, linseed oil, or sunflower oil, or other vegetable oil such as palm oil. This oil can provide several advantages. So first, the vegetable oil are good heating medium due to the ability to transfer heat to wood more readily and equally. So and in addition, oil can separate oxygen. We mentioned that the oxygen is the main culprit for the reduction of strength properties. So the oil can separate oxygen from wood during the treatment and then prevent the occurrence of the oxidative process that lead to the strength reduction in the treated samples. So apart from that, the boiling point of many oil are higher than the temperature required for the heat treatment. So for palm oil, for example, it had a boiling point of higher than 300. So it is very suitable for heat treatment of wood, as the heat treatment of wood normally takes place between 160 and 240. So oil is a very suitable candidate as a medium for thermal modification. So furthermore, additive could be added into the vegetable oil during heat treatment for wood property enhancement purpose. So you can add in the oil, you can add another additive to improve selected properties of the wood. However, although there have many advantages of using the wood, the oil as a heating medium for the wood, heat treatment using oil as a treating medium has also some drawbacks, some disadvantages. So first, high oil retention make the wood heavier and increase the transportation cost. So secondly, lack of oxygen inside the wood due to the formation of protecting layer at the wood surface has limited the polymerization and oxidation process of the oil. So the oil cannot be polymerized, and it will come out during the from the wood and form an undesirable pitch-like surface. And in addition, the oil heat treated wood tend to emit VOC, volatile organic compound, during the service, which might be a source of potential secondary pollutant and undesirable smell. The smell is not very good. And another drawback of the treatment involved is that the treated wood burn easily. So it's understandable when we use the oil, we can expect that the wood can be burned easily in a single flame source test. So it can be said that the oil heat treated wood has a lower fire resistance as its ignition time decreases after heat treatment. So the ignition time is very important in evaluating the flammability of building and construction material. So the flammability of the treated wood could have been negatively impacted by the presence of oil, as vegetable oil are highly flammable. Okay, so we have covered the three chemical modification, which is the acetylation, treatment, preparation, and the thermal modification. Now we came to the passive modification, which is the impregnation modification. Impregnation modification of wood is defined as any method that results in the filling of the wood substance with an inert material in order to bring about desired performance change. Historically, the first experiment on impregnation modification of wood using formaldehyde-based resin were carried out by the Forest Product Lab in USA during the 1940s. The initial research work included impregnation of wood with phenol formaldehyde resin, which with up to 100% resin addition, which resulted in an improved dimensional stability and improved resistance against fungi, termites, and marine borers. So initial experiment using wood veneer by applying impregnation with phenol formaldehyde, heat and compression were implemented, leading to the production of products called impact and compress. So the main difference between the impact and compress is the application of compressive force before and during the curing process of the ladder. So the compressed products, the compression is applied, but for the impact is no, just for the impregnation. So typically, compress is based on the phenol formaldehyde resin. While impact, we can base on the phenol formaldehyde, we can base on the melamine, and we can base on the urea formaldehyde. Cure under mild acidic or alkaline condition. So since the treatment with formaldehyde-based thermosetting resin may change the wood chemistry by polymerization reaction, they constitute an active modification. So which comprise two steps: the full volume impregnation of wood with the chemical dilute in a solvent under vacuum, and pressure and reaction and fixation of the chemical compound in the wood structure. So principally, phenol formaldehyde, melamine formaldehyde, or DMDHEU monomers and oligomers can be impregnated in any proportion with water as solvent, which swell the wood and by that enable resin molecule to diffuse into the cell wall along the concentration gradient. After impregnation, the polymerization and reaction to macromolecule are induced by heat curing. So after the impregnation, we apply heat to remove the solvent, mainly water, and create metallic bridges or at the bond between the resin molecule. So normally a temperature of 120 to 140 degrees Celsius have been suggested to achieve an adequate fixation and complete reaction of the resin, depending on the pH level of the monomeric or of the resin solution, the acidity of wood, and in some cases, initiator may accelerate the polymerization of the resin molecule during heat curing. So this is the figure here. We show that this is the untreated wood, and we impregnate the chemical, the monomer, the PF, the MF, using water as solvent, and then we let it to diffuse the diffusion, and then after diffuse, we apply the heat to cure. So during the heat curing, we remove the solvent and result in the polymerization of resin, monomer, and oligomer. So they cause the resin become insoluble in water and irreversibly fixed. So it means that it's permanent fix in the wood structure. So this is the changes caused by the impregnation modification. So based on the extensive lab study, it can be stated with certainty that the treatment with low molecular PF, MF, DMDHEU improve the biological durability, dimensional stability, weathering performance, and hardness of the solid wood and wood-based panel. Principally, the properties improvement correlate positively with the chemical loading being expressed by the mass gain that originate from the added chemical. In particular, a large number of lab studies analyze the resistance to degradation by decay fungi and show that the treatment with thermosetting resin achieve resistance level that correspond to the European durability class 1, very durable, to class 2, durable. So besides the increased resistance against decay fungi, resin treatment diminish even the attack by marine borers and subterranean termites. During the accelerated artificial and outdoor weathering, you have degradation of cell wall component, colonization and growth of blue stain and mold and moisture fluctuation were also reduced by the modification with thermosetting resins. But still, it cannot be fully prevented. So as a key objective to chemical moisture-induced dimensional change of the cell wall may be reduced to 70% by resin treatment. So while the surface hardness and compression strength increase with increasing modification mass gain, bending strength and modulus of elasticity were almost unaffected by the resin modification. And it should be noted that the remarkable loss in the resistance to what mechanical dynamic impact appear as an unavoidable side effect of the treatment with formaldehyde thermosetting resin, because the thermosetting resin tend to make the wood very brittle. So so therefore their resistance to the impact become lower. So here, so here we already cover all the well-known modification method. So now we will go into the another topic for the citric acid for wood modification. So citric acid is an organic acid with the formula C6H8O7, or you can see for the figure here. A citric acid could be found naturally from a variety of fruit and vegetable, especially in citric fruit, such as orange, the tangerine, lemon, lime, and pomelo. So among these, lemon and lime are among the citric fruit that contain a higher, a higher concentration of citric acid, which amount to 8% of the dry weight of the fruit. So citric acid is smellless, is odorless, it does not have smell, and exists in a white colored crystalline powder formed at room temperature. We can see here the white crystalline powder. So discovery of the citric acid could be traced back to 8th century. by Arabian alchemist known as Geber. He was credited for the first discovery of citric acid, the sour component of lemon and other unripe fruit. So in 1923, the Curie-Thom fermentation process discovered by the food chemist James Curie and microbiologist Charles Thom was commercialized. So now the commercialized citric acids mainly come from this process. So citric acid has a many use. Have many usage. Citric acid is widely used as a pharmaceutical active substance in pharmaceutical, personal care, and cosmetic products, as an accidurant and pH stabilizer in beverage, blood, and decoagulants, as well as diuretic and flavoring agents. So in recent years, many emerging uses of citric acid has also been identified, such as the cross-linker disinfectant, environment remediation, and extracting agent. However, despite the versatility of citric acid, the report on its use as a wood modifying agent and wood adhesive are still very scarce, and still lacking study on this, using citric acid as wood modifying agent and binder. Okay, so modification of wood using citric acid involve a reaction called wood esterification. So owing to the persistent environmental issue, more new green modification technologies of wood has been introduced in hope to replace the conventional preservative treatment method. The main purpose for wood modification is to change the molecular structure and of the cell wall polymer and result and lead to produce a wood with improved properties. So the example of wood modification we already discussed before, like the thermal treatment, the resin treatment. So esterification is one of the green wood treatment method. Esterification is a chemical reaction between the acid, the carboxylic acid, and the alcohol or other hydroxy group to form ester and water. Wood esterification is one of the most common chemical reactions that apply in wood modification. It is a reaction that can be performed within the wood cellular structure and therefore is appropriate for wood modification. There are two types of wood modification adopting the esterification process, namely wood esterification, and the second one is esterification-based bark impregnation. The former, the wood esterification, involves a reaction between the functional group of a treating agent with hydroxyl group of wood. Meanwhile, the latter, the esterification-based bark impregnation, involves the reaction of the functional group of one treating agent and the hydroxyl group from another treating agent, NO wood. So esterification with citric acid is an inexpensive and environmental friendly wood modification method to impart good dimensional stability as well as biological durability to wood and lengthen its service life. It's make the wood more durable, more dimensionally stable. So in the mid-1980s, non-formaldehyde-based finishes, namely the 1,2,3,4 butane tetracarboxylic acid, or we call it BTCA, was discovered to be promising cross-linking agent for cotton cellulose. So as the cotton cellulose behaves highly similar to wood polysaccharide, it has been deduced that the polycarboxylic acid could serve as a treating agent in wood modification. So the process of, like we discussed previously, is esterification. So simply put, the mechanism involved in the formation of anhydride and the formed cyclic anhydride was then reacted with the hydroxyl group of the wood polysaccharide polysaccharide to form ester linkage. So wood modification using aromatic polycarboxylic acid compound is relatively new, as the first study was reported by Payer and his co-worker in 2007, where a polycarboxylic acid resin was used to soak the flake of aspen wood. Dimensional stability improved significantly. And on the other hand, the moisture and swelling of small wooden block was reduced when treated with citric acid and PTCA. So here is the reaction mechanism of interaction between the wood and citric acid. The reaction mechanism involved a two-step esterification where anhydride was formed first, followed by the reaction of this cyclic anhydride with the hydroxyl group of wood and form ester linkage. So decomposition of the citric acid to unsaturated acid happened when it was heated at 175 degrees Celsius. Acetone dicarboxylic acid, aconitic acid, and itaconic acid are the main products. They are generated through dehydration of decarboxylation. So when subject to further heating, methyl malate anhydride is formed. So a quantitative analysis of the cross-linking reaction process and reaction parameters of the polycarboxylic acid and wood component by FTIR proved that the cross-linking esterification reaction process of polycarboxylic acid and wood is as follows. So first, the hydroxyl group or the carboxylic group in the polycarboxylic acid are dehydrated to form an anhydride. And then the hydroxyl group of the wood and the anhydride undergo a nucleophilic substitution reaction to form an ester. So this is how the mechanism of the esterification, the reaction between the citric acid and the wood. So when we compare the citric acid to other polycarboxylic acid, so why citric acid? So citric acid contains 3 carboxylic groups. Citric acid is a and then therefore it was called as a tricarboxylic acid. So first of all, polycarboxylic acid used in wood esterification must have 3 or more acid groups that are able to react with the hydroxyl group of the cell wall polymer. So malic acid and succinic acid having 2 acid groups could be adopted theoretically. However, it is very hard to obtain a second esterification reaction that is required for cross-linking. So therefore, they are not suitable for the wood to serve as a modifying agent for wood. But on the other hand, larger acids such as the BTCA, which have a 4 carboxylic acid group, are able to cross-link to a greater extent due to the ability to form many simultaneous anhydride intermediates at the same time. So when we compare the BDCN and citric acid, we can see that in common practice, BDCA and citric acid are the 2 most used polycarboxylic acid as cross-linking agent for cotton cellulose. BDCA and CA are known to show possibility to react with the wood cell wall polymer. Compared to citric acid, BDCA could perform more effectively due to its higher carboxylic group. So BDCA has 4 and citric acid has 3, has only 3. So therefore, BDCA could perform more effectively. So between citric acid and BCTA, BCTA was found to have a significantly higher portion. So BDCA was found to have a significantly higher portion bonded to wood than citric acid, mainly due to the fact that the citric acid could only form 2 ester linkage with cellulose. In addition, there is an interference between the alpha hydroxyl group of citric acid and wood cellulose, which might also contribute to the lower amount of citric acid bound to wood. However, despite these disadvantages, citric acid is cheaper and as a very easy, accessible, natural or synthetic products. In addition, some study showed that the fir and beech wood treated with PTCA and citric acid was found that the tensile retention strength of the citric acid treated sample was better than the PTCA treated sample. And based on this, therefore, many researchers have adopted citric acid as a wood modifying agent as well as wood binder. Well, due to the fact that citric acid is very cheap, very easy to find, and it has a better performance when it's used to modify wood. So therefore, citric acid has some advantages against the PTCA. So generally, the modification of wood using citric acid could result in several advantages and disadvantages to the treated wood. So the advantages include reduction in water absorption. So after the treatment, the wood will become less hydrophilic. So it will absorb less water and improve resistance against the termite and fungi. I mean, most probably due to the reduce of moisture content. And the citric acid treated wood has better modulus of elasticity and compression strength and better dimensional stability. However, there also has some disadvantages. So the disadvantages of the citric acid treated wood include there's no improvement in weather resistance. And some study found that the citric acid treated wood has reduced modulus of rupture. The strength is the modulus of rupture is reduced, and the impact strength because it's become more brittle after the treatment with citric acid, and the yellowing of the treated wood. So citric acid tend to turn yellow after exposed to high temperature. So therefore, for the wood after modified with citric acid, show a yellowing color, which is not unpreferable by some user that do not like the color. So in wood modification, citric acid can be used alone or mixed with additives such as sorbitol, glycerol, and glucose. So this is this is a study, the result, the finding, the study on the using citric acid alone as a modifying agent for wood. So when compared to the effectiveness of the DMDHEU and citric acid on the when compared to effectiveness of a DMDHEU, wood treated with citric acid display higher anti-swelling efficiency and lower motor absorption and higher tensile strength retention. So, so in addition, the reduction in motor absorption also show that it's better than the citric acid is better than the thermosetting resin. So the average compression strength of the modified wood improves significantly. So however, modification of wood with citric acid did not improve the weathering resistance of the modified wood. This can be explained by the fact that the citric acid only modified cellulose but not lignin. Weathering degradation often occur on the lignin polymer photochemically by exposure to UV light. So as a result, the cellulose fiber are loosened and can be easily washed off from the wood surface, which subsequently lead to a rough surface of the weathered wood sample. So citric acid, apart from that, citric acid treatment is known to impart the wood with higher resistance against termites. So citric acid might have affected the metabolism of termites and subsequently led to a higher motility of the termites. The termites, they still can bite the wood, but after that, they will die because the citric acid is highly acidic, and they interfere the metabolism of the termites, and high termite mortality is observed. So on the other hand, the improvement in the termite resistance might also caused by the strong smell by the citric acid. So and repel the termites from approaching the wood sample. First, a study using a double choice test sample found that the termites tends to avoid the citric acid treated sample, but it's not sure whether it's because of the very strong smell of the citric acid or other reasons. So we can do some work to find out. So but the report on the effect of the citric acid treatment on the mechanical properties of wood are rather limited. There's only some researchers used to see citric acid and report on the the mechanical properties of the wood. So treatment with CS, some research, the limited research reported that the citric acid improved the modulus elasticity of the treated wood as a result of the cell wall bucking and cross-linking of the cell wall polymer. So apart from that, compression strength was also improved. So unfortunately, citric acid treatment increased the brittleness of the treated woods, as a 50% loss in impact strength was recorded. And also the reduction in modulus of rupture was also recorded. So the citric acid treatment was known to reduce the impact strength and modulus of rupture of the treated wood. So apart from this, using the citric acid alone, citric acid can be used together with glycerol. Glycerol is a simple polyoid compound generated from the biodiesel industry as byproducts to attain better treatment efficiency. So this study have shown that the polymer of glycerol and citric acid could serve as a promising treating agent for wood. So with the existence of heat, both reactants can react and form a three-dimensional polymeric structure. Unreacted carboxylate group from the glycerol-based polymer are able to bond with the free hydroxyl group from wood macromolecule. So as a result, the polymer could be retained in cell wall after a curing and leaching test owing to the formed chemical bond. So we can see that the glycerol can be added into citric acid to improve the fixation of citric acid in the wood itself. So after the addition of the glycerol, the leaching of the citric acid becomes lesser to improve the treatment efficiency of the citric acid. So citric acid added with glycerol also has slightly higher impregnation rate compared to citric acid alone. The bending resistance of the beech wood treated with citric acid combined with the glycerol was also better compared to the sample treated with citric acid alone, due to higher amount of formed polyester in the cell wall, because the glycerol improved the fixation of the citric acid in the wood cell wall. So therefore, improved mechanical properties was observed in the citric acid treated wood. So aside from glycerol, sorbitol is also can also be added to the citric acid for better treatment. So sorbitol is a cheap feedstock chemical generated commercially from starch and cellulose. So sorbitol is able to react with citric acid to form polyester at high temperature, making it suitable for use to modify wood. However, report on the use of the sorbitol wood modification are still limited. Maybe some new study has mentioned that, but it's not updated here. So the earliest report, which is a patent, reported on the application of sorbitol and citric acid, as well as other combination of water-soluble reagent in treated wood sample, has been reported. So in the patent, the European beech sapwood modified with citric acid and sorbitol solution at different concentration has shown an increment in density, pH, thickness swelling, where the increment increased along with the increasing citric acid sorbitol concentration. So another study we also find that the Scott pine, the Scott pine sapwood, the Pinus species, treated with a combination of sorbitol and citric acid, and some selected properties of the treated wood were assessed. As a result of the treatment, resistance against brown rot, white rot, and blue stem fungi of the treated pine sapwood were improved significantly. So a solution of the study concluded that a solution of citric acid to sorbitol with a 3/1 molar ratio was used as a mixture to modify the Scott pine wood. The result confirmed that treatment is promising to impart decay resistance to the modified wood. However, the curing parameter used in the study has to be improved to overcome the leaching issue. So by using the sorbitol, we can still find the leaching issue of the citric acid, but it may be improved by manipulating the curing parameters such as the treatment temperature and the treatment duration. So maybe by using that, maybe the leaching, the fixation of the sorbitol and citric acid in the wood will be increased and result in better properties of the wood. So apart from that, the citric acid also was the glucose was known to be added into citric acid to use as to modify wood. Now, glucose glucose is an aldose sugar that are able to react with the hydroxyl group of the wood. So because owing to the glucose is a very small molecular mass of 180 Dalton, the glucose can be easily penetrated into a wood cell wall. Unfortunately, the glucose has a very low fixation ratio in the wood. So after the water leaching test, we can find that the wood treated with glucose has absolutely totally no glucose left in the wood after the water leaching. So in this case, citric acid can be served as a cross-linker between the glucose and the wood cell wall polymer and promote the fixation ratio of the glucose in the wood. So as we mentioned before, the glucose treated, the wood treated with glucose alone has no weight percent gain after leaching and almost total loss of the deposition of the glucose. But when we add the citric acid, cross-link with the glucose, we can the fixation ratio in the wood has been improved, and the leaching has also been reduced. So means it can bring a better properties to the wood. Although the application of activated, so another method is to activate the glucose, so to improve the fixation ratio. But however, although the application of activated glucose in wood modification did not lead to a good result, it, however, impart better impact strength to the modified wood. So treatment with citric acid often resulted in an embitterment of the treated wood. So the citric acid often lead to make the wood more bitter as a result of the cross-linking within the cell wall matrix. So by this, so using consequently the impact strength of the modified wood was reduced. So when combined with Ca, the citric acid, the impact strength of the modified wood increased along with the increasing activated glucose concentration. So activated glucose consume a high amount of citric acid, and therefore the cross-linking of the cell wall by citric acid was reduced, as well as the extent of the embitterment. So the activated glucose, it might be a solution for the citric acid, for the bitterness problem of the citric acid treated wood. So this is a very good future study direction to reduce the bitter sweetness of the citric acid treated wood. So there are some factors that affect the effectiveness of the wood modification by citric acid. Include the catalyst type we use, the wood species, and the heating temperature. So for the catalyst type, so a variety of catalysts could be used to facilitate the esterification reaction, where the sodium hypophosphite, SHP, is known as the most efficient one. The rate of the formation of anhydride intermediate was enhanced by the addition of SHP in addition to the minimized decomposition of cellulose during the curing process. So in fact, actually without the SHP, the application of citric acid alone could react with the wood. A weight percent gain of 4.6% was recorded in citric acid treated wood. However, after the addition of SHB, the weight percent gain is increased along with the SHB concentration. So apparently, addition of SHB did improve the weight percent gain. The weight percent gain increased along with the addition of dosage and reached a maximum weight percent gain of 6.3% at 10% SHB addition. However, some researchers suggest that 5% addition is the most economical. So other catalysts used also can be used, such as the chlorhydric acid, HCl, para, and TBA, and iron sulfate were also used that. And it was found that the HCl and the para-toluene sulfonic acid are the most effective, as they show higher carboxyl conversion to ester. So another one is the wood species. So wood anatomy also play an important role in deciding the effectiveness of the treatment, and it is directly proportional to the uptake of the citric acid. So a study showed that the white pine attained higher weight percent gain compared to the lodgepole pine after treated with a mixture of citric acid and glycerol using identical parameters. So the author has attributed this observation to the anatomy of the wood, where lodgepole pine has low permeability than white pine. So another study also demonstrated that the fir wood attained higher anti-swelling efficiency than beech wood when treated with 6.9% citric acid. Wood anatomy, so we can conclude that the most important wood species is one of the most important factor that affect the effectiveness of citric acid treatment. So if the wood is very porous, so it would result in higher uptake of citric acid and better properties enhancement. So another one is heating temperature. So as we know that the citric acid has a relatively high degradation temperature at around 175. And then so the study found that some wood sample cured at 140 degrees Celsius are more stable than the sample cured at 103 degrees Celsius. As no leachage was detected in the wood cured at 140 degrees Celsius. It is implied that the curing temperature of 103 degrees Celsius is not sufficient to ensure complete reaction between the Ca and the sorbitol. So in addition, sample that cure at 140 degrees Celsius attained better dimensional stability and bucking coefficient. Leaching analysis indicated that the treated wood sample cure at 160 degrees Celsius resulted in the lowest amount of leaching compared to that of the sample cure at 140 degrees Celsius, suggested that the intensive polyesterification has occurred at this curing temperature. It could be concluded that the temperature of at least 140 degrees Celsius is required to ensure the polyesterification occur to a greater extent. So, but although we know that we need a higher temperature to result in a better to lead to a better polyesterification. But the curing temperature should also be limited below the temperature that could cause irreversible damage to the wood sample itself. So we have to be careful to the temperature we use to cure the citric acid in the citric acid treated wood. So for the conclusion of this part, so we can see that we can conclude that the citric acid has been recognized as an environmentally friendly compound to improve some selected properties of the modified wood. Wood modified with citric acid display an improvement in modulus of elasticity, compression strength, and dimensional stability, and biological resistance, as well as reduced water absorption. So glycerol, glucose, and sorbitol can be combined with citric acid during the treatment of during the wood treatment to result in a better treatment. Several factors have been identified as able to affect the effectiveness of the citric acid treatment on wood, namely the catalyzed type, the wood species, and the curing temperature. So SHP is still the most efficient catalyst, but chlorhydric acid and the parataurine sulfonic acid also can be used. Also has there are some effectiveness in facilitate the curing of the citric acid. So it should be known that the temperature of at least 140 degrees Celsius is required to ensure the polyesterification occur to a greater extent to make sure that the citric acid is well fixed. It's well fixed in the wood structure and reduce the leaching during the water leaching test. So okay, so this is all for the part 1. So should we have a break before we start part 2? Hello? Hi, Miss Julia, can we should we have a break before we proceed with part 2?
Yeah, sure. Maybe or we can go to the Q&A first.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
So what time should we start again?
Okay. Thank you very much for the informative and interesting presentation in the part 1 especially. And right now we come to the Q&A session. I would like to have 2 questions. First from the participants. Please raise your hand by the raise hand icon in the Zoom meeting. And maybe if there is no question in the online session, I will present the Q&A session from the website. We already have 4 questions in the website. Maybe anyone who will raise hand in the session? Okay, Mr. Adli. Okay. He was our last presenter in the last day in the tomorrow. So, okay, time is yours. You can have a question. Okay, we have 2 participants who raising hand. Okay, please, Mr. Adli, you can deliver your question.
Thank you, Ms. Julia. Good morning, Lee. How are you?
Hi, good morning, Adli. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Lee, for the interesting presentation for the part 1. It's really interesting regarding to the wood modification. I'm sorry, I cannot show my video. I'm going to airport now.
Oh.
But I want to ask you first, what do you think the difference and advantages between acetylation and furfurilation. Which one do you prefer?
I'm sorry?
Which one do you prefer between acetylation and furfurilation? So, maybe you can explain the disadvantage and advantages from the acetylation and furfurilation.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you very much, Dr. Adli, for the question. So for me, between acetylation and furfurilation, acetylation is the most as the one of the most commercialized commercialized process, thermal modification process, compared to the furfurilation, which is still quite new. And acetylation, in terms of the, the treatment effectiveness, the acetylation is easier to be conducted because it's already many methods and many equipment out there for the use for the acetylation. Sorry, I lost my voice. However, there's also some drawback for the acetylation because acetic anhydride is a highly corrosive chemical, so it has to be used carefully. And the it's mainly involve the participation of skilled moderators, skilled workers to conduct the modification process. However, for the furfurilation, the furfuryl alcohol itself is a green chemicals that it poses no threat to the environment. So it is a very good candidate to substitute as an alternative to acetylation. But furfurilation also comes with some drawbacks, such as it is still restricted to the use of products. The product of furfurylated wood out there is still lacking and is very expensive. So it's only affordable by the person who really truly appreciate the wood and appreciate the environment. So this is the restriction. So the restriction of the of course I prefer the furfurilation because it's a green, but in terms of the price, in terms of the cost, we have to more works have to be conducted to reduce it so that it can be a more commercialized. It can be a more affordable for more users. So that is my answer.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lee. So what do you think? What kind of a solution to overcome the drawbacks from acetylation?
I think acetylation we can acetylation actually is involve also involve the esterification process. So which I discussed at the citric acid. So hopefully in the future, we can use the citric acid as a complete alternative or complete substitution to the acetylation.
Okay. Yeah. I think we are doing that also in Indonesia. Yeah. I think you know Professor Wahyu Dwianto.
Oh yes.
Yeah. He's doing impregnation using citric acid.
Oh,
at
really?
Different concentration. Yeah. Maybe we can talk about it later.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
sure.
really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Lee.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we can go to the next question. Please, Ms. Umami, you can delivering your question.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Yulia, for your time. Thank you so much for your insightful presentation, Dr. Lee. To be honest, this topic is relatively new for me. It is interesting actually to know that there are various options that we can get to extract the citric acid, for example, from the fruits, vegetables, and other sources. However, to be implemented in wood modification, is there any specific requirements before we select those source of citric acid to get the substance that is most effective for the wood modifications?
Okay, so actually recently I just come through for I came through with a publication, and they said that I extract citric acid from different sources such as the lemon, such as the pomelo, and they found actually the sources of the citric acid has no significant influence of the treatment effectiveness or as a wood modifying agent. So as long as you have to good enough purity of the citric acid, you can use it as a wood modifying agent. So that's.
Okay, thank you. And my next question is, you mentioned there are various combination of citric acid and with glycerol and other substances. So which combination that is most effective to be implemented for the wood modifications?
So for the time being, from the current research, I can say that the glycerol is the best, because after we mix the glycerol with the citric acid, the wood treated with the combination of these two show very low leaching. And the properties, the mechanical properties and dimensional stability is very good as well. The only problem is the brittle, but it's become less brittle than the citric acid alone, but it's still not enough for us. So we have to find another method to reduce the brittleness. Maybe the activated glucose would be a good candidate. So this is my answer.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer. Is there any time, because I still have like one more question because this is very interesting for me.
Okay. Can you leave after your question? Can you give me 5 minutes to go to the toilet first?
Sure.
Okay, you can ask your question first.
Okay. My last question, because you also mentioned that the use of citric acid for wood modification can also improve the resistance of wood from termites and fungi, right? So about the concentration of the citric acid itself, so what's the concentration is the most effective for that? I mean, like to increase the resistance of the wood from the termites and also fungi.
Okay, from my own experience, citric acid of less than 10% based on the wood dry weight is good enough to result in a good performance of fungi and termite resistance. So actually 6% or 7% is good enough. Depend on what the properties you need to achieve. If you want to achieve a high mechanical properties, you maybe you need have more than 10%. But if you need for the decay resistant, for the termite resistant, 6, 7, 8, I think is good enough. But you have to use vacuum impregnation method. The dipping method cannot result in the good decay resistant.
Okay, cool, awesome. Thank you, Dr. Lee, for your answer.
Thank you so much.
Okay, maybe it's just only 2 questions in online session. Before we going to the second speech, maybe we have 10 minutes or 15 minutes breaks. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So please, the operator, you can take some video for the break session.
This is forester. Cikulele song. Cikulele. Cikulele song. This is forester. Cikulele song. Cikulele. Cikulele song. Hawaiian forester of the hula hula dancing, like the golden of my dream. My heart is smiling. Hawaiian forester of the hula hula dancing, like the golden of my dream. My heart is smiling. This is forester. Cikulele song. Cikulele. Cikulele song. Aloha. Aloha. Until we meet again. Aloha. Aloha. Until we meet again. Aloha. Aloha.
Okay, I think this is the end of our break time. Dr. Lee, are you ready for the next session?
Yes, thank you, Miss Julia.
Okay, so please, you can present your the next part about the citric acid as binder for wood composite. The time is yours.
Thank you. So can you can you see my share screen? Can you see my share slide? Okay, so thank you very much. So now in the second part, I will proceed with the part 2 as a citric acid as a binder for wood composite. So in this part, I will discuss a brief introduction on the wood adhesive used in the wood-based industry. And the second part is the usage application of citric acid as a binder for wood composite. This is let's have some brief introduction on the wood adhesive. This topic may be already covered by Dr. Adli yesterday, but we just treat it as a to refresh your memory. So what is adhesive? Adhesive refers to any substance which, when applied between the surface of two or more material or object, or we call it substrate, that can be used to hold, fasten, or bond them together. So the definition of the substrate or adherent is the material to which the adhesive is to be applied. So for example, we have many types of substrate here. We have ceramic, we have glass, we have metals, we have wood, we have plastic. So in this topic, we will focus on the wood as a substrate. And then for the wood adhesive, wood adhesive can be broadly classified into two main groups, which is one is synthetic, another one is natural-based resin. So the synthetic resin means man-made and not from any natural sources. Thermosetting resin and thermoplastic resin are the two major groups of synthetic wood adhesive. And meanwhile, natural-based wood adhesive often refer to the animal-based resin such as beeswax, gelatin, and plant-based such as lignin, tannin, and starch. So this is the main classification of the wood adhesive. We have synthetic and natural. So today we will focus on the type of the synthetic. Now, what is the definition of thermosetting and thermoplastic wood adhesive? So the keyword here is the setting. Sorry. The keyword here is the setting and the plastic here. So thermos means related to heat. Thermosetting means once set or cured, the resin is not soluble and do not soften on heating. So then once it's cured, it is become insoluble, and you cannot dissolve it in water anymore. It's not soluble anymore. So on the other hand, the plastic, thermoplastic, so like plastic, it will be softened again when exposed to heat and will be solidified again when left on cooling. The example of the thermosetting resin include many types of formaldehyde-based resin, such as the phenol formaldehyde, the urea formaldehyde, you have the melamine formaldehyde, the resorcinol formaldehyde, the phenol resorcinol formaldehyde, and isocyanate. On the other hand, the thermoplastic, the example of thermoplastic include the polyvinyl acetate, PVNC, and ethylene vinyl acetate. So today we will focus on the thermosetting resin. There are three major classes under thermosetting resin, namely aminoplastic, phenoplastic, and isocyanate. Aminoplastic refer to a plastic or synthetic resin, the resin made from amino compound, NH2 here. Urea formaldehyde and melamine formaldehyde resin are the two basic types of aminoplastic resin, aminoplast resin. So the phenoplastic is a plastic or synthetic resin made from phenolic compound. You can see the phenoplastic phenolic compound, C6H6O. You can see the phenol here. For example, phenoformaldehyde resin. The phenoformaldehyde resin is one of the example of phenoplastic or phenoplast. So the class is isocyanate. Isocyanate contain 2 or more isocyanate groups. So this one, for molecule, for example, or for the methylene diphenyl diisocyanate (MDI) or polymeric methylene diphenyl diisocyanate (PMDI). So this is the 3 major classes under the lay under thermosetting wood adhesive. Formaldehyde-based adhesive represent the biggest volume in wood adhesive field. It is prepared by a reaction of formaldehyde and various chemicals such as urea, melamine, phenol, resorcinol, or combination thereof. Many combinations could be synthesized, such as formaldehyde with urea to form urea formaldehyde, formaldehyde with melamine, using the formaldehyde as a base unit. So melamine with formaldehyde to form melamine formaldehyde, phenol with formaldehyde to form phenol formaldehyde, or even you can add more some melamine, urea, add with urea formaldehyde to form melamine, urea formaldehyde. There's many types of formaldehyde-based resin that you can synthesize using the formaldehyde as a base unit. So at delivery, these adhesives are mainly liquid, but convert to a 3-dimensionally cross-linked and insoluble, non-meltable network during hardening and gelling. This adhesive, different adhesive, normally require different hardening conditions. For example, aminoplasts like the urea formaldehyde and melamine formaldehyde require acidic condition to harden, to cure, which phenolic resin, the phenol formaldehyde, require strong alkaline condition, and resorcinol resin require neutral and lightly alkaline condition to cure, to harden. So aminoplastic adhesive is the most important class of adhesive in the wood-based panel in the wood-based panel industry. So urea formaldehyde (UF) and melamine formaldehyde (MF) resin are the most prevalently used adhesive in the production of particle board and medium density fiberboard (MDF), and partly also for oriented strand board (OSB). So, plywood or also block board, etc. So compared to urea formaldehyde, melamine MF melamine formaldehyde is more moisture and heat resistant compared to UF, and MF melamine formaldehyde emit lesser formaldehyde. But however, one of the problem is with the pure MF is the melamine is very expensive. So most of the particle board manufacturer, they will add urea into the melamine formaldehyde MF resin to reduce the cost, and this form melamine urea formaldehyde resin. So phenolic resin, phenol formaldehyde, is the second most important adhesive for wood-based industry. The resin show complete resistance to hydrolysis once cured, and it was often used for water and weather-resistant glue line and boards such as water and weatherproof particle board, OSB oriented strand board, MDF medium density fiberboard, or plywood for use under exterior weather conditions. So owing to its resistance to hydrolysis, it has very low formaldehyde emission. So compared to the UF, the urea formaldehyde resin, urea formaldehyde resin is very susceptible to the hydrolysis. It makes the UF very unstable under the moist environment and elevated temperature, and tend to emit very high amount of formaldehyde emission. But for PF, it's very stable, resistant to hydrolysis. So it has a very low formaldehyde emission compared to UF. However, one of the disadvantage of the PF, the phenol formaldehyde, is it requires a longer pressing time compared to the urea formaldehyde, which cure very rapidly. So this is one of the disadvantage of the PF. It requires long pressing time. And another another disadvantage is that the pure PF will produce a dark color glue line on the board surfaces, which is sometimes is very unfavorable for decorative purposes. So this is the form and color of the three formaldehyde-based resin. The urea formaldehyde, you can see that it's, the liquid form is milky white in color, and the melamine formaldehyde usually is clear. It's very clear, crystal clear color, and the phenol formaldehyde is brownish to dark red. So the bond line produced by the urea formaldehyde and melamine formaldehyde is colorless, while the phenol formaldehyde, like we mentioned before, it will produce a dark color, red to black color bond line. So urea formaldehyde and melamine formaldehyde is very, so they have the advantages in, in here. So once they are pure, they are colorless. They don't have the bond line. We do not see any color on the bond line. So this is the color of bond line and surface of the board bonded with US, MF, and PM. So very obviously we can see that the picture at the bottom is bonded with PM because it's the reddish color. So, but for the above two, we can as both urea formaldehyde and melamine formaldehyde or produce colorless bond line. So to distinguish between them, most of the factory always add the green color dye to the melamine formaldehyde glue, especially at the core layer. So you can see that the melamine formaldehyde bonded particle board is green in color. Their core layer is green in color. It's not because they are originally is the green color, is because the green dye color added by the manufacturer to better distinguish between the UF and the MF bonded particle board. So this is the green dye in the core layer. So the formaldehyde-based resin is widely used in the wood-based industry because they have high reactivity. They cure in a very short time. So it's require very short pressing time and pressing temperature. And then they are very low cost and very cheap. The urea formaldehyde resin is very cheap compared to other adhesives. However, the wood-based panel bonded with this formaldehyde-based resin has a major issue, which is the formaldehyde emission from the board bonded with this urea formaldehyde resin. What is formaldehyde? Formaldehyde is a colorless, reactive, strong-smelling gas at room temperature. It is one chemical in a large family of chemical compounds called volatile organic compounds, VOC. The term volatile means that the compound vaporizes or become a gas at room temperature. Formaldehyde can be manufactured as a liquid. When in the liquid form, we call it formalin, or solid formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is an important industry chemical used to make other chemicals and different types of products, such as home furnishing, household cleaner, paint, textile, landscape, and yard products, medicinal and personal care products, and pesticides. So chemicals that are created with formaldehyde and or have formaldehyde added to them include the following, such as the resin and lubricants, the polycyclic methylene plastic, 1,4-butadiene, the MDI. This is the example of the products they have created with formaldehyde or with formaldehyde added to them. Formaldehyde can be released into air as an off gas from a material and product made with air. Formaldehyde can also be released into the air by automobile, like our car, our motor, cigarette, and burning woods, kerosene, or natural gas, It is also naturally or it's also a naturally occurring substance. So for example, our wood, the wood at the outside tree, the tree itself also has a low amount of formaldehyde. So it is a natural occurring substance in the nature. So in 2006, formaldehyde is classified as a carcinogenic to humans based on sufficient evidence of carcinogenicity in humans and in experimental animals by the International Association of Research, Cancer Research Center. So formaldehyde is normally present at low level in both indoor and outdoor air. Level in outdoor air are generally low, so below 0.001 to 0.02 milligram per meter cube, but higher level can be found in some homes, such as 0.02 to 0.06 milligram per meter cube. Common source of human exposure include vehicle emission, workplace, paint and varnishes, foods and cooking, release from particle board and similar building material, carpet, tobacco smoke, and the use of formaldehyde as a disinfectant. Formaldehyde emission in the European household show that the main source of formaldehyde in indoor situation include man-made sources like wood-based material, carpet, textile, paint, and mineral woods, as well as natural sources like fire, smoke, and air pollution. All of this is the main source of the formaldehyde emission. So we can, when we see in this the figure, the source of formaldehyde, we can find that the highway gasoline vehicle emit the most highly formaldehyde, which amount to 26%, and the off-highway diesel vehicle 20%, and the recreation equipment 10%. And we can see that the pulp and paper and wood products represent 3% of the sources of formaldehyde. So open burning, wildfire, fuel combustion, or that they all involve the combustion also emit some amount of formaldehyde emission. So occupational exposure to formaldehyde may occur during manufacturing and processing and during use of formaldehyde-containing products, mainly via the derma through the skin and inhalation with it puff. So to make tobacco smoke as well as urea formaldehyde foam insulation and formaldehyde bonded wood products are all important sources of formaldehyde exposure. The general public may also be exposed to formaldehyde emitted from some building material such as wood products. This is the sources of formaldehyde. So for us, despite the popularity in wood-based industry, there is a major issue associated with the formaldehyde-based adhesive, like we discussed before. Formaldehyde emission, formaldehyde emitted from the wood-based panel in use bonded with this formaldehyde-based resin, particularly urea formaldehyde resin, because melamine formaldehyde and phenol formaldehyde is very stable and emit very low formaldehyde. So we know that in 2006, the International Agency for Research on Cancer already classified formaldehyde as a carcinogenic to humans, group 1. So it means that the emission, the formaldehyde emission, if we expose either whether short term or long term, it will bring a detrimental to the it may detrimental to the health, human health, harmful to the human health. Short-term exposure in an enclosed area, for example, in an office or in a house, will cause a sick breathing symptom, where people feel dry throat, eye irritation, with breathing difficulty, headache, and dizziness. And for long-term exposure, there is strong evidence that long-term exposure will cause cancer, particularly leukemia. Formaldehyde on health risks. How we can expose to formaldehyde and what effect it will cause to our health. So formaldehyde is readily absorbed from the respiratory tract following inhalation, when we inhale, when we breathe the formaldehyde, and from the gastrointestinal tract following ingestion, we eat or we consume, but it's poorly absorbed following dermal exposure, which means that if it's splashed on the skin, the absorption is not very high compared to the consuming and the injection and the inhalation. So indoor exposure in enclosed areas such as residential houses and educational facilities has been detected in Japan. And we have a terms, we call it sick house syndrome, sick house syndrome, causing headache and nose and throat irritation among users. The major effect following a critical inhalation exposure to formaldehyde is irritation and burning of the mucous membrane of the nose, mouth, and upper respiratory tract. This cause you the irritation of the respiratory system. Acute inhalation exposure to large amount of formaldehyde may also give rise to weakness, headache, nausea, vomiting, pneumonia, dyspnea, wheezing, coughing, respiratory depression, obstructive bronchitis, central nervous system depression, convulsion, and coma. When this is very severe case. In a very severe case, a coma may happen. Inhalation of great amount of formaldehyde may be deadly due to the onset of the pulmonary edema or respiratory failure. Symptoms such as headache, dizziness, sleep disorder, and memory loss can be related to the chronic exposure to formaldehyde. Usually, some study found that the user have around 30 to 60% higher risk in getting headache and dizziness if the exposure persisting for a long period of time. So when you're exposed to the formaldehyde as a very high concentration for a very long period of time, we have 30% to 60% higher risk to get headache and dizziness. Okay, so exposure to either the gas formaldehyde or splashes or solution contain formaldehyde are corrosive and can cause irritation and burn to the skin and irritation to the eye. So when you get the formaldehyde, so the liquid in the liquid form splash on your skin, you will feel a burning sensation in your skin, on your skin. And if it's splashing on the eye, you will have very high irritation in the eye. So ocular exposure means that when you splash the formaldehyde into your eyes, the formaldehyde may result in a permanent alteration to vision. It will affect your vision or even cause blindness. So repeated or prolonged inhalation exposure to formaldehyde, as may be experienced in occupational setting, cause irritation of the mucous membrane of the eyes, nose, mouth, and upper respiratory tract, similar to that observed following acute exposure. Occupational exposure to formaldehyde vapor has been associated with temporary reversible decrease in lung function. So lung function, so when you're in your workplace, when you exposed to formaldehyde vapor, it will cause a temporary decrease in lung function. But the chronic inhalation of formaldehyde does not lead to respiratory sensitization, but cause the symptoms such as asthma and depending on the individual. Occupational exposure of workers to formaldehyde has been associated with a notable increase in mortality due to nasopharyngeal cancer compared with the US national population. There was only limited epidemiological evidence that formaldehyde caused nasal cancer in humans, but there is a strong but not sufficient evidence for association between the leukemia and occupational exposure to formaldehyde. So it is how to say in consensus between the research that the exposure of formaldehyde to exposure of formaldehyde is associated with the cancer, especially leukemia. Okay, some studies show that there is a sufficient evidence for a linkage between the formaldehyde exposure and nasal and paranasal cancer and leukemia. Among all the formaldehyde-related cancer, occurrence of myeloid leukemia is the most common among patients. The possible link between formaldehyde and increased risk of leukemia, of particular myeloid leukemia, there is increased incidence of leukemia have also been reported in several occupational epidemiological studies. So in another previous study covering 25,619 industrial workers exposed to formaldehyde occupationally, it was possible to find an increased risk of death due to leukemia, particularly myeloid leukemia. In a review based on several meta-analyses, the researchers Zhang et al. 2009 concluded a certain linkage between the formaldehyde exposure and myeloid leukemia. So it can be said that the evidence, there is strong evidence between the link between the formaldehyde exposure to the myeloid leukemia. Well, apart from the cancer, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, like the one that Stephen Hawking, is another disease. They are highly related to long-term exposure of formaldehyde. So in an investigation conducted by the American Cancer Society Cancer Prevention Study 2, more than 1 million individuals were examined over time. So based on this study, it was concluded that the individual who reported formaldehyde exposure in the workplace has a 34% higher rate of ALS in the non-exposure group. So the formaldehyde emission is highly toxic and it's very dangerous to the human health. So we have to be very careful to the products we use to ensure that there is very low formaldehyde emission. So formaldehyde emission has negatively impacted the health of the user. So to solve the issue, manufacturers around the world has come out with the most efficient and straightforward method, which is the lowering the formaldehyde and urea ratio. So which means that we use a lower ratio of formaldehyde. So to ensure that no or very less free and unreacted formaldehyde that can be emitted into the air after it was formed into the wood products. So this is most direct and straightforward, a very straightforward method to lower. Over years, the formaldehyde to urea ratio has been decreased drastically from 2.5 to 3/1 in the early 70s to 1.6 in the end of 70s. And a few years ago, the formaldehyde to urea ratio was reduced to 1.2 to 1.8/1. And currently, some ongoing research has been reported using ratio of 0.8 to 0.9/1, the formaldehyde to urea ratio, or even lower. So lowering the formaldehyde to urea ratio, of course, it will lead to the decrease of the formaldehyde emission, but at the same time, it also lowers the reactivity of the resin, because formaldehyde as the most reactive substance in the resin is the amount is reduced. So therefore, the reactivity for the resin has been lowered, and also result in the lower degree of cross-linking in the pure network, and therefore lower bonding strength. And this led to the reduction of the properties of the board produced. Therefore, it is a main challenge to reduce the content of formaldehyde in the UF resin, and to achieve this without any major changes in the performance of the resin. So while the research is still ongoing, so the main purpose is to use as low as formaldehyde ratio as possible without causing negative effect on the properties of the board. and also or at least the minimum reduction of the bond. But it's very challenging. So another solution is to use the green alternative as a wood adhesive. So citric acid is one of the green alternative with non-formaldehyde base, and it can be found easily naturally. So declining use of the non-renewable fossil resources is anticipated to restrict the usage of conventional synthetic resin in the near future. But synthetic resin usually come from the formaldehyde base. Formaldehyde is actually synthesized from the petroleum base. So petroleum is, we know, is non-renewable. It's a non-renewable fossil, and it may use up one day. The target now is to use a renewable fossil resources to replace the conventional synthetic resin. So in addition, conventional synthetic resin, such as the UF we discussed before, release formaldehyde. They are detrimental to human health. They are toxic. They have negative impact to our health. So several countries in the world have already imposed very strict regulation in limiting the formaldehyde emission from the wood-based panel. A non-formaldehyde-based resin or green binder are therefore in high demand. We call it a non-formaldehyde-based or a green binder. In high demand. So on account of that, citric acid is potentially to be applied as a green binding agent to produce particle board or any other wood-based composite with no formaldehyde emission. So application of non-formaldehyde-based or green binder from renewable resources has become an irresistible general trend. One of the most recent and influential system reported is the use of citric acid for promoting bonding of wood, particle board or other wood composite. Citric acid has shown its potential to bind wood-based panel made of several types of biomass, some of the non-wood or either wood or non-wood, either bamboo or palm or some wood. So thanks to its adhesivity and green nature, citric acid could be a good candidate as the main binding agent for wood and wood-based products. Good adhesivity and bonding properties of the citric acid are a result of the ester linkage formed as the carboxyl group of the citric acid react with the hydroxyl group of the wood constituent, such as the lignin, hemicellulose, and cellulose. So this is the bonding mechanism. When using citric acid as a wood adhesive, the bonding mechanism is based on the hypothesis that the esterification of wood hydroxyl group by citric acid has formed several cross-links across the bonding interface. So Umemura et al. Suggested that the reaction between the carboxyl group of citric acid and hydroxyl group of wood constituent form ester linkage that result in the adhesivity and good bonding properties. Phenolic hydroxyl group of the G-type lignin were found to react with citric acid. Similar to the wood polysaccharide, a hydroxyl group on the aliphatic chain of lignin unit display alcohol-like behavior and therefore could react with the citric acid too. The spectra also confirm that the peak belong to hydroxyl mate of the group of the aliphatic side chain of lignin and of cellulose were decreased significantly, suggesting that the esterification has occurred. So in addition, the reduction of the hydroxymethyl group may also imply the internal rearrangement of the lignin, which subsequently contributing to the improvement in water evaporation. So the multi-TOF analysis has also confirmed that the co-reaction of citric acid with lignin and carbohydrate of wood. So we found that the citric acid was able to form a bond, ester linkage with the lignin and the carbohydrate of the wood. So from the literature, it has been identified that the citric acid has been used as a main bonding agent for 4 types of wood-based composite, namely wood-based molding, wood-based particle board, fiberboard, and the veneer-based panels. So the veneer-based panel here is the plywood, refer to the plywood and laminated veneer lumbers. Among them, particle board is the most extensively studied. So first, this is the wood-based molding. The application of citric acid as main bonding agent for wood was first investigated by Umemura et al. By fabrication of bark molding from acacia medium bark powder. So Umemura is the first researcher that used citric acid as a main bonding agent for wood. So he produced the wood-based molding from the acacia medium bark powder. So during the fabrication of the bark molding, the researcher examined the effect of the citric acid to the bark metal ratio on its performance. The citric acid bark to bark metal ratio selected was 0 to 100, 11.1 to 88.9, 20 to 80, 33.3 to 66.7, and 40 to 60. So therefore, we can expect that 100% bark only a molding exhibit a very low molecular modulus of rupture value of 1.5 megapascal. So which indicated that no bonding strength was ever existed. So, in other saying that when you use 100% bark without any citric acid, the molecular the modulus of rupture value is very low, which means indicated that there's absolutely totally no bonding strength was exists between the 100% bark molding. But however, the modulus of rupture value increased drastically when citric acid was added. With the addition of 20% weight, 20 weight percent citric acid, maximum modulus of rupture value of 23.4 megapascal was recorded. So when we compare to the 100% bark molding with only 1.5 megapascal MOR value, at 20% weight, 20 weight percent citric acid, the MOR value increased to 23.4 megapascal. It improved significantly. And the maximum MOR value was found when 20 weight percent citric acid was added. However, beyond 20 weight percent, MOR of the bark molding started to decrease. And modulus of elasticity showed a similar trend. The author confirmed the similar trend as in the MOR. So after the 20 weight percent citric acid, the mechanical strength of the wood-based molding decreased. So based on this finding, the author confirmed the adhesivity of the Ca in acting as a major wood bonding agent, and the optimum content for citric acid was 20 weight percent. In addition, citric acid was also reported to have higher water resistance. So the researcher concluded that the superior physical and mechanical properties were brought by the adhesiveness of the citric acid due to the existence of the ester linkage between the carboxyl group derived from citric acid and hydroxyl group of the bark component. So the acacia medium bark wood-based molding is the very first report of the citric acid as a major wood bonding agent. And after this, the same researcher, the Umemura, also confirmed that the 20 weight percent citric acid content was the most optimum to obtain the best mechanical strength for wood-based molding. However, unfortunately, the thermal properties of the wood-based molding decrease along with increasing citric acid content. So once again, it was clarified that the bonding mechanism of the wood-based molding was contributed by the ester linkage between wood and the citric acid. Now it's the particle board. So particle board, as was mentioned before, particle board is the most extensively explored wood-based panel using citric acid as a binding agent. In the fabrication of particle board, citric acid was used by Umemura as a binding agent, and with addition of sucrose and starch can be added into the citric acid to improve the bonding performance. So Umemura used sucrose, add sucrose to the citric acid and use it as a bonding agent for the particle board. So the application of sucrose was intended to improve the bonding performance as the adhesion area of the particle in particle board production is much smaller than that of the wood flour used in the fabrication of wood-based molding. So there are several factors that influence the properties of citric acid bonded particle board, such as the board density, pressing time and temperature, pre-drying treatment, and citric acid content. So after going through with all the literature, the available literature, we can, based on the study summarize, it can be concluded that the effective processing condition for the citric acid bonded particle board are: first, the pressing temperature of more than 180 degrees Celsius for 10 minutes, and the board density must have at least density of 800 kilogram per meter cube, and the citric acid content used must be 20% or above, and the pre-drying treatment of 12 hours at 80 degrees Celsius is preferential. It's recommended to have a pre-drying treatment after the citric acid was mixed with the wood particles. So citric acid bonded particle board fabricated with this effective processing condition are likely to obtain superior bending and internal bonding strength, good dimensional stability, and biological resistance, and extremely low formaldehyde emission. So unfortunately, screw holding power and wet bending are under par. Another challenge facing by the citric acid is that it would require higher pressing time and longer pressing time, higher pressing temperature and longer pressing time compared to the particle board produced industrially, which is the particle board produced in industry normally use temperature range between 140 to 180 degrees Celsius for 5 to 7 minutes. But for citric acid bonded particle board, a pressing temperature of at least 180 degrees Celsius, some studies recommend 200 degrees Celsius, is required in pressing the citric acid bonded particle board, as the melting point of the citric acid is around 150 degrees Celsius. So at high pressing temperature, more than 180 degrees Celsius, the core layer of the particle board might have attained an effective temperature of more than 150 degrees Celsius to cure the Ca. So it is very important to have a very high pressing temperature of 180 or more than 180 degrees Celsius to ensure that the core layer of the particle board has attained an effective temperature of more than 150 during the pressing. So as the melting point of the citric acid is 150. So if you apply the temperature lower than 180, it's very difficult for the core layer of the particle board to achieve the 150 degrees Celsius effective temperature. So, however, the pressing temperature should not exceed 200 degrees Celsius, as hemicellulose started to decompose at this temperature. So the limit, the threshold here is 200. Do not use the the heat temperature more than 200 degrees Celsius. So 180 and 200 is the best option. So as a result, if you use very high temperature, more than 200 degrees Celsius, the hemicellulose will start to decompose. And as a result, the volatile component are formed from the degradation of the hemicellulose, and it will interfere the adhesiveness of the core layer. So the volatile components of the decomposed hemicellulose will interfere the curing or the curing system of the curing mechanism of the citric acid in the core layer. So it's not recommended to use the temperature more than 200 degrees Celsius. So pre-drying treatment is preferable, as the 20 weight percent citric acid often lead to high moisture of the spray particles. So normally when we are using the producing the urea formaldehyde particle board, we only use 10 to 12, maximum 12% of 12% resin content based on the dry wood weight, or the dry wood, oven dry wood weight, oven dry particle weight. But in the case of citric acid, we need to use 20 weight percent citric acid content, resin content, citric acid content, or even higher. So at this spread rate, as the resin content, the spray particle will become very wet. When it's wet, the excessive moisture will inhibit the effective reaction between the adhesive and lignocellulosic material, and hence will result in a poor bonding. So normally when we make a citric acid bonding particle board, after mixing with the citric acid at 20 weight% of the weight percent, we will let the spray particle to dry in an oven at 80 degrees Celsius for at least 8 hours or for 12 hours to reduce the moisture content of the spray particle, so that when we press it in the particle board, it will not cause the poor bonding. So, but because when the spray particle is too wet, when you open the hot press, it will cause the burst or blister, which means that the core layer of the particle board is not bonded together. So we have to avoid the excessive moisture of the spray particle during pressing. So apart from the sucrosization, starch was also found to be able to improve the dimensional stability and bending strength of the particle board due to the strong hydrogen bond interaction between the citric acid and starch. So starch is a major carbohydrate reserve in plant. It is biodegradable polysaccharide, and it's produced in abundance at low cost, and it exhibits thermoplastic behavior. So starch also contains a considerably high amount of hydroxyl group that can be expected to cross-link with the citric acid, and therefore it can improve the properties of the particle board bonded with this starch and citric acid. So here to share a little bit of the research. This is the thickness and weight changes during the cyclic aging treatment of the oil palm trunk particle board. Oil palm trunk particle board bonded with urea formaldehyde as a control, and 100% citric acid with 0% starch, and 87.5 citric acid with 12.5 starch. This is tapioca starch, and another one is 75 citric acid and 25% starch. So we subject the oil palm trunk particle board to the cyclic aging treatment. So, so the particle board, the produced particle board, we will immerse in the water for 2 hours, and then for 24 hours. And then after 24 hours, we take out for to dry at 105 degrees Celsius for 10 hours. And after the dry, we immerse again at the 70 degrees. And after immersion, we take out again for dry another 10 at 105 degrees Celsius for another 10 hours. And after dry, we boil it in boiled water for 4 hours. And then after the boiling, we dry again for 10 hours at 105 degrees Celsius. So during each stage, the thickness and the weight changes of the particle will be recorded, and the thickness changes and weight changes at every stage of the cyclic aging treatment was recorded. So from here, we can see that the urea formaldehyde bonded particle board is very non-dimensional. It's very poorly. They have a very poor resistance to moisture to cyclic aging. So it only can sustain at the 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5, the 5th stage, the 10-hour drying. Sorry. So 10-hour drying the oil palm trunk particle board. So when we subject to after the 4 stages of this the cyclic aging treatment, so we can see that the particle board, the oil palm trunk particle has disintegrated. It's split into half. This means that it cannot withstand the moisture of the cyclic aging treatment. But for the citric acid and starch combination, we can see that it's very stable here. The changes is not more than 20. There are some is 20. So we can see that the for the 87.5% citric acid and 12.5% starch as the most stable, the most moisture resistant. From here, we can see that because it has lower thickness change over every stage of the cyclic aging treatment. And for the weight change, we can also see the same trend here. So weight change, we can see that the UF bonded oil palm trunk particle board is disintegrate at the 5th stage after 10-hour immersion. And during the drying, it's already split into the half, and therefore it's not moisture resistant. And for all the citric acid and starch bonded particle boards, also more or less the same weight changes, indicate that the citric acid bonding oil palm trunk particle board is very moisture resistant. And when compared to the oil palm front, just now is the particle board made from oil palm trunk particles. And now this is the oil palm front, the particle board made from oil palm front particles. You can see that this one is compared to the oil palm front particle, this particle board, this is more the UF bonded, urea formaldehyde bonded, or PF particle board is has very low resistance to moisture because it's only survived and it can withstand the 3rd stage of the treatment. So after the 2 hours, after the 24 hours immersion, during the drying, they already split into half, and not even experience the 10-hour immersion at 70 degrees. So compared to the oil palm front particle board, this one has oil palm front particle board has less moisture resistant. For the weight change, also the same, and we can see that the citric acid and starch bonded oil palm front particle board is better than the urea formaldehyde, but it's compared with the oil palm trunk particle board, it's still not that convincing compared to the oil palm trunk particle board, because some of the changes have more than 40 compared to the very low thickness change for the oil palm trunk particle board. So this is the EFB. EFB is more or less the same with the oil palm front OPF particle board. So it has showed a similar trend with the OPF particle board. So similarly, it also can withstand for the 3rd stage of the cyclic aging treatment. So the thickness. So generally, in most of the cases, the thickness and weight change value increase along with increasing starch content. So from here, we can see that a bit different with the oil palm trunk. So we can see that as the starch addition, the starch starch content increase, the thickness change also increase. So it can be concluded that the addition of starch contribute to the increment of water-soluble compound in the particle board, because of starch is water soluble. So as a result, the water resistance of the adhesive reduced and the particle board was subjected to the repeated immersion cycle. So this is true because the starch is water soluble, and when you subject the wood panel, the particle board to the water, immersed in the water, of course it will become it will have higher thickness changes. But this is for the dimensional stability. But addition of starch can improve the mechanical properties of the particle board. So it's a catch-22 situation that which one you have to consider which properties that you are looking for. Okay, and this is the visual change before and after being subjected to cyclic aging treatment. So from here we can this is the oil palm frond particle board, oil palm trunk, and empty fruit bunch for the urea formaldehyde bonded particle board after subjected to cyclic aging treatment. So we can see that the oil palm frond and oil palm trunk particle board, some of the samples already swell very much, more than 100% is 300%. There is 200%. It's already double with the original. And some even can, after the cyclic aging treatment, they split into half. They cannot withstand the moisture. And then the EFP particle board perform the lowest, because you can see that you can all the particle boards already is integrated into a much. And on the other hand, the citric acid bonded particle board, you can see the before and after. You cannot see visually. You cannot see a significant changes. You cannot see a significant changes in the thickness. The thickness almost remain the same before and after the treatment for the citric acid bonded particle board. So this is another main observation is the very dark color of the citric acid. Darker color was observed for the citric acid bonded particle board after the cyclic aging treatment, and we see that at the high temperature, as we mentioned before, at the high temperature, citric acid will tend to be yellow. We're yellowing. So this is a dark color. It's due to the citric acid. So we can conclude that the citric acid is impart a very good dimensional stability to the particle board. So on the other hand, urea formaldehyde bonded particle board either display a huge extent of swelling or complete disintegration after the cyclic aging treatment. So from here, we can see that the citric acid is a very good candidate to substitute the urea formaldehyde. The termite resistance of the citric acid bonded particle board and urea formaldehyde resin bonded particle board. So we can see that although the trend is not very significant, but generally the citric acid bonded particle board has slightly better termite resistance compared to the urea formaldehyde bonded particle board. It may be due to the strong odor, or maybe the citric acid maybe affect the metabolism of termites. But it is interesting for us to observe that the citric acid citric acid bonded particle board did not prevent the attack of termite attack. The termites still attack the sample and cause some holes in the sample, but it is much better, much lesser compared to the control. The control is heavily attacked by the termites. So we can see that we can conclude that the citric acid might impart some extent of protection to the particle board. And for decay resistance, we also can see that the citric acid bonded particle board has better decay resistance. The improvement may be caused to the acidic nature of the citric acid itself, because the citric acid is very acidic, so it's not suitable for the colonization of the fungi, the white blood fungi. So another possible explanation is the wood moisture content by citric acid. The particle board bonded with citric acid has lower moisture content, and therefore it's also discourage the colonization, the growth of the fungi. So this is a formaldehyde emission of the urea formaldehyde bonded particle board and citric acid bonded particle board. You can see that the UF bonded particle board has for OPF, OPT, and EFP has more than 2 mg. It's around E0 classes, but all the citric acid bonded particle board has a very low formaldehyde emission. Some of them, many of them is less than 0.5. Oh, 0. Sorry, this is wrong. This is not super E0. That's lower than 0.5 mg per 100 gram. Oh, this is perforated. Okay, yes, this is correct. This is the perforated value, for which 1.5 is equal to super E0. This means that the citric acid bonded particle board has a very low formaldehyde emission, which is low, even lower than the lower emission class of super E0, which is less than 1.5 milligram per 100 gram. So this is the perforated value of the formaldehyde emission. It's not desiccated method. So this is the value for the super E0, 1.5 milligram per 100 gram. So we can see the very low formaldehyde emission. And actually, the citric acid do not consist any of formaldehyde. So therefore, the formaldehyde here come from the material itself. So the OPF, the EFP, and the OPT has its own formaldehyde. It is interesting to know that the oil palm trunk has a quite high of formaldehyde itself. Okay, so we're done with the particle board. So this is for the fiber board. Medium density fiber board was made from the study on the fiber board is not very much. So the medium density fiber board MDF was made from pineapple leaf fiber. The pineapple leaf fiber were treated with 100% citric acid and a combination of 25% citric acid plus 75% sucrose, and then consolidated and hot pressed in the MDF. So the produced MDF were exposed to the termites, Coptotermus homosanus, for 3 weeks. The result showed that the pineapple leaf bonded with citric acid alone has higher resistance against the termite, indicate that the citric acid might possess some inhibitory properties against termite due to the acidity, its acid. So for example, many essential oil, the acidic essential oil in the market, such as orange oil, was found to have some extent of effectiveness against the termite due to their acid nature. So on the other hand, fiberboard from elephant dung fiber bonded with citric acid was fabricated at the adhesive content of 10, 20, and 30 weight%. Using 30 weight% at a pressing temperature of 180 degrees, the TS, the thickness swelling of the produced fiberboard, has met the requirement in JISA 5905, where the maximum thickness swelling was not exceeding 12%. So it means that when you bond the elephant dung fiber with 30 weight% citric acid, and then you press it at 180 degrees Celsius, the board produced has a thickness swelling lower than 12%, which is very high dimensional stability. However, so when the pressing temperature was raised to 200 degrees Celsius, a lower amount of resin content, 20%, 20 weight% citric acid was found sufficient to achieve the requirement. So water absorption of the citric acid bonded fiberboard was also improved along with increasing citric acid content. Apart from that, citric acid bonded fiberboard also show a good modulus of rupture, modulus of elasticity, and internal bonding strength. So that from here we can see that the for the elephant down fiber, 30% weight percent, 30 weight percent fatty acid are needed to achieve the requirement, provided it was bond pressed at 180 degrees Celsius. But when we use a higher temperature, lower content of 20 weight percent is also sufficient. So this is how we manipulate with the pressing parameters. So the next one, the fourth one, the last of wood-based panel that use citric acid as main bonding component is veneer-based panel. So veneer-based panel will refer to the plywood and the laminated veneer lumber (LVL). So this application of citric acid as a binding agent for these two is it's very rather scarce, it's very lacking. So the first report on the application of citric acid as binding agent for LVL was reported by the Dell in 2020. So it's very new. So poplar veneer were modified with 20% citric acid and then passed into LVL. The results suggested that the citric acid is a promising binding agent for bonding wood veneer panel. So on the other hand, so this is the only laminate LVL study we found on the literature in 2020. Maybe in the recent year there's more, and for plywood also the same. So in 2020, only two study, but I believe that now is the study is already expanded. It's more study on this. So, but for in 2020, only two research was used using citric acid as a bonding agent for plywood. So using citric acid as bonding agent for plywood is relatively new application. It was said that the low viscosity and solid content of citric acid was the main reason that restricted its use in bonding plywood. So citric acid, we know the citric acid when we dissolve in the water, the viscosity is very low compared to the formaldehyde-based resin. So this restricts the application, the spreading of the plywood veneer. So this is a challenge faced by the researcher. So to overcome this barrier, a novel citric acid and sucrose adhesive with sufficient viscosity and solid content was synthesized by the researcher to produce plywood with good bonding performance. So the researcher reported that the wet shear strength of the plywood increased with the increasing citric acid content. The best shear strength was recorded in the plywood bonded with 25% sucrose and 75% citric acid, as well as increased wood failure percentage. The plywood bonded with 100% citric acid also shows some extent of bonding strength and wood failure compared to the plywood bonded with higher sucrose content. So therefore, based on this study, a glue spread rate of 140 grams per meter square is sufficient as the wear shear strength of the plywood produced has already surpassed the standard, the minimum requirements stipulated in the standard. And therefore, the application of higher glue spread rate is not necessary. So 140 grams per meter square is sufficient for the glue spread rate in the production of plywood. And pressing time also play an important role in the curing of the citric acid and sucrose adhesive, where 7 minutes was reported to be the most optimum parameters. And the most important thing is the pressing temperature. As we mentioned before, citric acid require high pressing temperature, with the pressing temperature of more than 170 degrees Celsius lead to a certain extent extent of dry bond strength, where 190 degrees Celsius resulted in the best adhesive curing. So plywood pressed at 190 degrees Celsius has a wet shear strength that surpassed the standard. So the researcher reported that the board pressed at lower temperature of 130 and 150 degrees Celsius exhibited no adhesion strength, no strength at all, implying that the citric acid and sucrose adhesive did not cure well at this low temperature. So it must be a temperature higher than 170, and the best is 190. This is the pressing parameter that we need to consider when we want to produce the plywood using citric acid. Okay, so to conclude for to fabricate the citric acid and sucrose bonded plywood with acceptable performance, so one has to first synthesize the citric acid and sucrose adhesive with the ratio of 75 to 25. A citric acid to sucrose ratio of 75 to 25 at 100 degrees Celsius for 2 hours. So the synthesis of this adhesive is important. Use the 70%, 75% citric acid and 25% sucrose. So you heat it at 100 degrees Celsius for 2 hours. So this is the best adhesive that can produce, that can be used to fabricate plywood. And the hot press, and then after that, apply the synthesis adhesive on the plywood medium, and then the hot press the plywood at 190 degrees Celsius for 7 minutes, using a glue spread rate of 140 grams per meter square. So we, based on their research, glue spread rate of more than 140 is not necessary because it did not result in any improvement in the performance of the plywood. So 140 grams per meter square is sufficient. And the hot pressing temperature must be at least 170, and the best is 190 degrees Celsius for press for 7 minutes, at least 7 minutes. So comparison between the citric acid bonded particle board with conventional particle board. We compare the performance of the citric acid bonded particle board. We found that the performance of the citric acid bonded particle board is comparable to that of conventional particle board. However, higher density, which is 800 kilogram per meter cube, and resin content, which is 20 weight percent, are needed for the citric acid bonded particle board to attain that comparable strength. So it is noted that the new giant rate particle board, so for example, new giant rate particle board made from new giant rate at 700 kilogram per meter cube, bonded with 5 and 10 weight percent, citric acid has a very low modulus of rupture and modular of elasticity value, as well as internal bond compared to the 10 weight percent UF bonded poplar particle board with the same density. So it means that at 700 kilogram per meter cube, the properties of the particle board is not comparable to other conventional particle board. So we need at least 800 kilogram per meter cube to provide a better strength to the citric acid particle board. And particle board bonded with PMDI require a relatively lower resin content, which is 8 weight percent, to attain sufficient strength performance, followed by phenol formaldehyde, which 12 weight percent. So at 20%, so for citric acid bonded particle board, at least 20% weight percent is required for the particle board to exhibit higher MOE and lower thickness swelling value than the PMDI and PF bonded particle board. So from here we can see that we need at least 20 weight percent resin content, citric acid content, to achieve the properties that are comparable to the 8 weight percent PMDI and 12 weight percent PF. However, it is interesting to note that the citric acid bonded particle board has better dimensional stability than the PMDI and phenolformaldehyde bonded particle board, which indicate by the lower thickness swelling value after 24 hours soaking. So therefore, it can be concluded that the citric acid show promising potential in replacing conventional adhesive to produce particle board with good properties, provided that we have to use of quite high citric acid content and the high density of the board is required to achieve the comparable properties compared to the conventional particle board. So the conclusion for this part, so the citric acid has been proven able to substitute synthetic resin as a binding agent for the manufacturing of wood-based panel. In the fabrication of wood-based composite, citric acid alone could attain sufficient bonding properties for the board. However, sucrose and starch could be added to improve some selected properties of the boards, such as the mechanical properties. So for the manufacturing of the particle board with the optimum properties could be attained when 28% of citric acid or sucrose adhesive with a ratio of 25 over 75 was pressed at a temperature more than 180 degrees Celsius for 10 minutes, with the condition that pre-drying treatment of 12 hours at 80 degrees Celsius was adopted. So contrarily, bonding the flat surface of the plywood involved a completely different application compared to the particle board and fiber board. So therefore, to fabricate citric acid and sucrose bonded plywood with acceptable performance, one has to synthesize, like we mentioned before, synthesize the citric acid and sucrose adhesive with ratio of 75 to 25, Ca to sucrose ratio at 100 degrees Celsius for 2 hours, and hot press the plywood at 190 degrees Celsius for 7 minutes at a screw spread rate of 140 grams per meter square. So what we can see here, producing the particle board and fiber board is totally different with producing plywood, the veneer-based veneer-based panel plywood. So what is the same is that we both require the high pressing temperature of more than 180. So the one of the challenge faced by the citric acid is that it requires a higher pressing temperature and longer pressing time. So the further study should be conducted to match the industry practice. Where some further study has to be conducted to investigate how to reduce the pressing temperature and pressing time of the citric acid so that it can match the industry practice, and it has increased its potential to be commercialized. So overall, this is the environmental impact of the citric acid treated wood. The environmental impact modified wood with citric acid, a green renewable chemical, is expected to be able to enhance the performance of the products and reduce the final environmental footprint. Logically, modified wood is expected to possess longer service life compared to the longer service life expectancy compared to the untreated wood. Right. So from here, the environmental impact of the citric acid and glycerol treated large foam pine wood siding. We treat the researcher treat with citric acid and glycerol was studied, and the damage impact categories was evaluated using life cycle assessment. So it was found that the citric acid treated siding, the wood siding, has 2.8 times longer life expectancy than the untreated ones. So for land occupation and impact for respiratory organic category, CA modified siding exhibited 80% and 44% lower impact. So it means that it has the low in these two categories, citric acid modified wood resulted in a much lower impact to the environment. So when simplified into 5 similar stages, which include the production, the distribution, installation, maintenance, and end of the life, the production stage. So the production stage of the treated wood siting presented the most environmental impact, followed by maintenance stage. So here it means that in these stages, in the production and the maintenance pose the most environmental impact in the citric acid wood siding. So the production and maintenance stage respectively contributed to 88.2% and 11.8%. So from here we can say that energy and the material consumed in the citric acid production is one of the important factors that contributing to this factor. So in the case we need to further reduce the environmental impacts of the citric acid, the energy and the material consumed has to be refined. So we have to find a more efficient extraction process for citric acid that pose less environmental impact to the environment. So this is the future outlook. The application of citric acid in the wood-based industry is believed to be expanded in the near future had its potential been fully excavated. One of the driven factors is the environmental issue. Environmental awareness among the consumer increased continuously in the recent years as a response to the climate policy action. So at the same time, industry have been urged for adapting a transformation from a waste-intensive linear economic system toward a less waste-producing and longer lifetime production consumption system due to the emergence of so-called circular economy policy. One of the corresponding strategies that needed to be taken by the industry is to produce products with longer durability and better recyclability. Modified wood automatically become the target and would influence the recyclability of the wood and subsequently its environmental footprint. Nevertheless, study on the particular topic in assessing the possible and challenge in recycling of modified wood is relatively scarce. Modified wood product has become popular since the 2000s. Criticism received for the toxicity nature of traditional preservative treatment in combination with the dwindling source of natural durable tropical hardwood has diverted the world attention to modified wood. So up until now, the role of modified wood has been insignificant in the circular economy, but it is believed that its market share will be expanded in the future, and subsequently, the need for recycling modified wood will also increase. So therefore, the task in ensuring the recovered raw material and subsequent product free from any toxic chemical are most vital. So all of these factors favor the application of a green modifying agent such as citric acid. So this citric acid has a very bright future because they're now emphasized on the environmental awareness, and they need to recycling the modified wood without any toxic, free from any toxic. So citric acid is a non-toxic green modifying agent. So therefore, in the future, the citric acid would have seen a very good potential to be used as the modifying agent. So this is the reference of my presentation. Okay, thank you. Terima kasih. So that's all.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, for your speech. Okay. Thank you very much for giving us such informative and interesting presentations. For your information, Dr. Lee, the forestry program in Brawijaya University just established 2 years ago. So we just have students in 3 generations only. today's lecturers is the participant who joined is the student from the second generations.
Oh, second.
So because of the limited human laboratory and many things, there are only two interests in our program. First is a conservation and the second is agroforestry. So your today lecture is very increase our knowledge about something new, especially in the wood composite. So thank you very much.
Thank you also for inviting me.
Yes, and for the next session, we will have two questions in the online session. So please, for all the participants, you can raise hand by the icon from the meeting. Please raising your hand. Okay, Mr. Adli. Next, one question, please. One more questions. Actually, we have three questions in the website. So
Okay.
this is okay that we have just one question in the online session. So please, Mr. Adli, time is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lee, for the great presentation. Maybe first, can we get the PPT file of your presentation? It's really interesting.
Yes,
That's the
sure.
first question. Okay, thank you. And then regarding the citric acid, I've been doing that also maybe since last year, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you about the use of citric acid alone as additive, because when I prepare the citric acid solution, it's really really, it's like water. The viscosity is really low. So it's not sticky. So what do you think? If we use citric acid alone, can we call it as an additive or just a modifying agent? Because it's not sticky. It's like water. It's like water, and then yeah, we can wash maybe our hands using that citric acid solution because a green chemistry is not toxic, so it's not sticky also. So can we call the citric acid as wood additive or just a wood modifier? Because when we treat usually as a additive in a particle board or fiber board, it's like we spray the citric acid and then we press the molded fiber board or particle board into a wood-based composite such as a particle board and fiber board. So I think that's a kind of a modifying agent to modify the particle of the fiber via ester linkage from the reaction between the carboxylate group of citric acid with the hydroxyl group in the wood. What do you think about that?
Yes. So thank you very much for your question. So first of all, I would like to ask, what is the solid content you are prepared for?
It's around 59%.
59%. It seems like the
almost 60.
Almost 60, but it still is very watery, right?
Yeah. I checked the viscosity is only around between 50 to 60 centipoise. It's really low.
Yes, it's low. So actually, I agree with your point of view that it might not be considered as the binder for the wood. It's more to the, yes, I think you are right. It's more to the modification. You modify the wood particles and then you press it. So I think I have come to some publication with there some of them they say they use the citric acid as a main binding agent, and some of them they say they use the citric acid as to modify the wood, and then the wood particle, and then produce it in the particle board. So I think this is a very controversial issue that you can consider either this is a modifying agent or this is a binder, because there is still no a clear line between these two. So actually, I agree with you because it's more like you modified the wood particles instead of use it as a binder.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you because when we use it, the
Mm.
citric acid, it's kind of a modification of the wood, and then we press, and then there is a cross-linking between the citric acid and the wood. So we can call it also binderless because it's not a binder. It's kind of a pre-treatment before we press the wood. Wood, it can be veneer or particle or fibers, and then we when we press it without addition of sticky material adhesive such as is isocyanate, polyurethane, or maybe a formaldehyde base, we can use citric acid alone as a modifier. So we can call it maybe binderless because we don't use a binder in there.
Binder. Yes. I think it's interesting from this aspect that it also can be considered as binderless. Because as you say that there's no binder, because it's just a pre-treatment, it's a modification. So I think this is a great direction for us to be pre-treated that, and then we use another binder to bind it. So I think I totally agree with you.
Okay, yeah. Except if we add another material such as carbohydrates, sucrose, glucose, starch, maybe we can call it adhesive because there is a formulation, something like the base adhesive is carbohydrates, and then we add citric acid as a modifier to prepare the adhesive, and then we can use that citric acid sucrose or citric acid starch adhesive as a binder, something like that.
Yes, I agree. Yes.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Adli, for your question. And I already sent the 3 questions in the chat box. So for the first questions, this is come from our students. This is about it is mentioned in the PowerPoint that word treatments is closely related to the interaction of water content in the wood. The question is whether there is a specific moisture content percentage that represents success in wood treatment. And the second question is about, are there any disadvantage to the chemical modification of acetylations? How does acetylations works so that wood polymers are not recognized by fungi? And the last question is, it is mentioned that furfuryl alcohol is produced from agricultural waste. The question is, what kind of agricultural waste can be used to produce furfuryl alcohol? This is already in the chat box.
Okay.
Okay.
So thank you very much. So okay, for the question 1. So the wood treatment related to the to the interaction of water content of the wood. What is the specific moisture content percentage? Okay, so actually there's no specific moisture content percentage to represent the success in wood treatment. So if we compare with the unmodified wood, where between the modified wood and unmodified wood, we will have to compare their equilibrium moisture content, which is EMC. So if the EMC of the modified wood is lower than the modified EMC of modified wood is normally lower than the unmodified wood, untreated wood. So this we can consider it is a success. It has success treatment, but maybe but from extended from there from the EMC. So based on once we have the EMC of the 2 wood, the modified and unmodified one, we can calculate the moisture exclusion efficiency. So from here we can use the 2 EMC. We can calculate the moisture moisture exclusion efficiency, which means that as a positive ME value means that the wood treatment is effective. So of course, as high the higher the ME value, the higher the MEE value, the better the treatment efficiency. So based on the literature I read before, MEE value of 50% is considered as a very effective wood treatment. So if you want to characterize the effectiveness of treatment, you have to first calculate the EMC, and then from the EMC you can calculate the MEE, moisture exclusion efficiency. So this is for the first question, and the second question is the the modification and acetylation is any disadvantages? The disadvantages is like I said before, is because and is normally involve the chemicals such as acetic anhydride. So it is a very corrosive chemicals. So that it required that the person who run this to conduct this process is a skilled worker, or you can you have to conduct it in a very careful condition, and then the cylinder you use for the acetylation, you have to change, or you have to apply coating because it's very corrosive. And after a few trial, you have to change it. You have to apply a new coating inside the cylinder for another acetylation treatment. So, and how does the acetylation work? And acetylation, because it's forming a covalent bond between the acetyl group with the wood hydroxyl group. So it will feel like a covalent bond is formed between the acetyl group and the hydroxyl group, and this is the main mode of action is to block out the moisture of the wood. So like I said before, the wood polymer are not recognized by the fungi. The theory is already rejected by some researchers, because some study found that in the acetylated wood, in the acetylated wood, the acetylated content of the wood reduce as a function of decay. So it means that the fungi still can recognize the wood polymer after acetylation. So the main theory here that prevents the wood from decay is a diffusion of water. So out of the 5 theories just mentioned before, the reduction in the diffusion of the water will change the decay kinetic of the fungi. So this is the main theory that prevent the wood from decay. So this is for question 2. And perforal alcohol is produced from what kind of this one I just know is from corn cob. The cob of the corn, the corn, jagung.
Yes.
And others I'm not very sure. I can find it online. I think I can find easily online. And then another question.
Yes, there is one additional question from Mr. Atli again.
This one I have to apologize because
active participant.
Yeah, very active. And for this question, I have to apologize because I'm still finding the way to reduce the temperature. So there's a strategy to reduce the pressing temperature and time, but this one I would like to apologize because I haven't find a way to reduce the pressing temperature and time yet. Perhaps we can discuss together, and we can have a discussion, a group to discuss what is the method to reduce the pressing temperature and time. Thank you. Sorry, Dr. Adli.
Yes, so this is make the more collaboration with him. So
yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lee, for your today's session, lecture, your speech, and many knowledge we have in this morning. And finally, we come to the end of this session. So I would like to thank to all the participants, all of participants for the very active, and also for the speaker, and also for the all lecturer, and also Mr. Adli for today's participation. And finally, give the applause for the speaker and for you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm closing the session. So please, Mr. Jainuddin, time is yours.
Okay, thank you to Dr. Lee Singhua on the material that has been given, and thank you and to Miss Yulia Milopata STMSE who has been the course of the material delivery session. Okay, before ending the study 3-in-1 lecture, we are pleased to invite Dr. Lee Singhua to convey the message and impartition in this 3-in-1 lecture activity. Please welcome Dr. Lee Singhua. The time is yours.
I'm sorry, just now I was distracted. Can you repeat?
Yes, we can hear you.
I'm sorry, can you repeat? I just now my laptop run out of battery, so I missed the part.
Can you repeat again?
Totally, you can deliver your closing statement from this lecture to end
maybe
this
3-in-1 statement.
Session.
I'm sorry, our closing statement now. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So thank you very much for having me here. It's a very great experience because I've never conducted the lecture in such a 3.5 hours. It's very challenging to me, but it's very quite interesting because during my preparation, the slide, I feel very happy that I can share the knowledge with the student of the university. And thank you, Mr. Jainuddin as an MC. Ms. Yuria, thank you for as a moderator. As Ms. Uma, thank you for communicate with me in WhatsApp. And thank you to Dr. Adli for recommended me. And thank you for everyone there for having me here. So I think if you have another session of this, I would love to join again. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Lee, for your closing statement. So we really thank you for taking time to be our guest in this lecture. Despite your tight schedule, I believe that you are such a busy person. We really appreciate that you are willing to give us the lecture. It is such a really interesting topic about the natural wood modifier and binding, because such research, I think, is very important and is very required, especially like to reduce the impacts of the harmful chemicals, the artificial chemicals in wood processing technologies, I guess. And also through this opportunity, it also can broaden the knowledge of our students about wood science and technology as well. And I hope that through this general lecture, we can also tighten the relationship between the Brawijaya University and also the University of Putra Malaysia that has been going really, really well, because we really have a lot of collaboration as well with the University of Putra Malaysia. And I hope that this session can also encourage our students to do their research about the wood science. Although currently we don't have the major of wood science because we still like relatively new in forestry study program. But in the future, I hope that this lecture can give our students also the knowledge and insight to do, like, if anyone are interested in the wood science, they can also choose this kind of topic as well, because it's really interesting, really. Yes, I think that's all from me. And actually, 5 of our staff is going to visit University of Malaysia in the early November.
Oh, really?
Yeah, 5 of us, 5 of our staff is
University of Malaysia. Which faculty?
Pardon?
Which faculty?
I think it's Faculty of Forestry.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, agriculture. So probably later there, you can like if you can meet and also like discuss with them for the future collaboration and other opportunities.
Yes, sure.
Collaboration or research, or probably student exchange or other stuff, other things.
Yes.
Yeah, we can talk more about that later on.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Lee.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you to Dr. Lee Senghua for UPM Putra Malaysia, and then thank you for Miss Maslatul Umami as well, and for Ecosis SJ with the information, and then closing statement for the Dr. Lee. Okay, we will we can activate camera internet will documentation with Dr. Lee, with Miss Maslatul Umami, with Miss Yulia Minopata, and with Mr. Adli, and then for student program forestry for open camera, please. Please, student forestry Brawijaya University, open camera. We will documentation with Dr. Lee, and then for documentation session, I will wait when then and then for slide 2 matter of 1, and then until 3 will and then community initial please for documentation. Okay. Okay, for slide 1 in matter of 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Okay. And then slide 1 matter 1, 2, and 3. Okay, for next slide 2 until 1, 2, and 3. Okay, for the next for last slide. Okay, in a matter 1, 2, and 3. Okay, thank you for the Dr. Lee Singhua and Mr. Adli, and then Miss Yulia, Miss Maslatul Umami, and then student forestry Brawijaya University. This is time issue. Okay, Alhamdulillah, we have been the event together, and we at and of the is an event, and then in event is Studi 3-in-1 lecture. This is and then I Zainuddin as Master of Ceremony. Okay, I asked the Master of Ceremony and the event. We have event, and then by computer, and then mahasiswa, and then okay, thank you, and then wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. See you.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi
Okay, see you. Thank you.
Thank you. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Dr. Lee.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Agli.
Mr. Agli.
Bye.
Allow me to leave the Zoom meeting.
Yes,
And see
thank you everyone and all the committee and also all the students. So